Hi everyone, this is What If Fan. We are back with another part of What If There Was a Different Luffy. Please find fanfic name and author name in the description and please support the author. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Let's start chapter 281, Sabaody Archipelago 17 third-person POV. Sabaody Archipelago, first half of Grand Line. Both weapons clashed in the air, generating rays of armament haki as Luffy continued his transformation into Phase 2, battling a monkey 5 times his size. Their weapons clashed once more, creating another wave of haki that spread like wind across the area. Both vanished and reappeared in the air, a third wave of haki emerging. All the Straw Hats watched from a distance as the fight continued. So strong, Vivi commented, watching the explosions occurring in the distance. The terrain was completely destroyed, with some trees down and the ground in pieces due to their fight with Kong. Luffy beat an admiral and is now fighting that monster. Nami remarked with a hint of concern, since Luffy might have just come out of one fight and was already in another. Nami began to release her transformation, returning to her usual appearance, as did all the others transformed into their hybrid forms. It seems like a clash of strengths, Rayleigh commented, looking into the distance at the two fighters. A more powerful explosion occurred in the air, as Luffy and Kong clashed with increased force, progressively upping their blows. Luffy did not prioritize speed, but strength, since this man was even stronger than him, though not faster than Kizaru. The explosion had again shaken the ground of the group, who kept their eyes narrowed at it. "The devil is losing," Enel remarked with a narrow look. "Hey, you can't be serious," Nami exclaimed as her concerns became reality. "It's true," Zoro responded calmly. "Are you saying Luffy-sama is gonna lose? Shouldn't we fight too?" Shirahoshi asked, horrified. "Kong is more powerful in that bestial form," Yamato replied calmly. "However, Luffy is not in his bestial form either, where his form prioritizes strength and endurance." She responded in a serious and rational tone. "Woof," Choo-Choo barked in his usual dog form. "Look, it seems like he's about to transform." Alvida spoke as she watched Luffy and the Monkey King clashing against each other, while Luffy began to cover in flames, losing the clash. Then all the Straw Hats saw flames rise even larger, and from them a huge storm of purple flames flew into the sky. "There it is," Hugo commented as red eyes glowed among the flames as they vanished and the already destroyed ground broke even more, with Ifrit stepping on it forcefully. "So the devil has finally transformed," Enel commented in an arrogant tone. Kong stopped at a distance looking at Ifrit for a moment. "So this is your beast? We've never seen anything like it. It's very likely that you are the first." His hand began to catch flames in his fist, while the hand holding the massive ace emitted rays of its own Akuma no Mi. Luffy was now 5 times taller than Kong, which made him frown at what he was seeing in front of him, but soon his eyes turned fierce again. "Roar!" Ifrit roared with the desire for battle. Both stared at each other for a few seconds before charging at one another, exploding the ground beneath them. From a distance, the explosion was heard along with 2 lights, both the blazing flames of Luffy and the golden energy of the Monkey King, which was different from Kizaru's. At that moment, several Marines and government agents were evacuating injured Tenryubitos from a knocked-out auction on stretchers, taking them safely to the port to be shipped to Mary Geoise immediately. There was a vice-admiral on the island who had come on Kizaru's ship along with the admiral to assist him, a powerful user of observation haki. He could tell very well what was happening on his Den Mushi, and he was also middle-aged, having served under Kong's command when he was a cadet, recognizing who was fighting with Luffy at that moment. "I repeat, PX-4 and PX-5 have been destroyed. Sentomaru is knocked out near the port. Kizaru has been defeated and has become a hostage. Lord Kong is fighting Monkey D. Luffy in their bestial forms at this moment." He spoke as the explosion occurred in the distance, generating a huge hot wind for them, even there. "I am assisting in the security of the injured Tenryubitos, while the battle happens kilometers away, but it's affecting not just this island in the archipelago, it's very likely that the whole place is feeling it too." He spoke through the Den Mushi, which showed an upset face. Sengoku was listening to this in his office. he immediately turned off the Den Den Mushi, not wanting the person to hear what he would do next. "Damn!" he yelled, and his tone was heard throughout Marineford. Sengoku was in front of his desk, now destroyed with the punch that had shattered it with his yell. If Garp had been at Marineford, he would have been there laughing at him sitting next to him while eating his cookie, even though Sengoku doubted he would have the mood for it at that moment, after dealing with two people so close to him, not being Luffy. How can this be happening? Is it some kind of divine punishment or something? Sengoku couldn't believe it. Luffy had knocked down Kizaru, who was the admiral who had the best chance against him out of all three. Now Kizaru was a hostage, and only Kong, whom the world government said they would send, was in conflict with Garp's grandson. The situation was not good, but he had faith in Kong, his former boss. Damn, in such a delicate moment, I can't even pull forces from this place. That boy is causing even more problems. Sengoku complained, but he could only hope that Kong would manage to turn the situation around. Meanwhile, in the middle of the island, the intense fight had begun with all the beasts, one holding a 25-meter sword, and the other a smaller one with a staff that shrank and expanded in size. Luffy launched a sideways slash which Kong defended after spinning his staff. "You will not defeat me so easily, child," Kong said with a primate sound as he threw the sword aside and opened a gap in Luffy, who pointed his staff at him, expanding it and striking Ifrit's chest as he was quickly launched backward. "Husband!" Alvida was surprised as Luffy had his body carved backwards. The explosion of the ground being destroyed continued while the staff kept expanding, Ifrit's body passing through the entire island, while in a town, people were afraid of the explosions happening in the distance. Suddenly an explosion occurred next to the city, with a formation surpassing any building, while Ifrit's body was still being dragged by the staff. So, this is the power of the Monkey King. Luffy was not having an easy time, as he felt his back continuing to be dragged across the ground. Frustrated with that situation, he grabbed the staff in his chest with his free hand and turned his body, putting his feet to support on the ground while trying to stop the advance of the staff. He came off the ground and was on the surface being dragged through the place. He finally stopped when he reached the edge of the island, reaching the edge of the sea that divided all the islands of the archipelago, stopping at the edge of the place. "You managed to stop." Kong spoke from a distance and looked towards Luffy's companions who were keeping Kizaru knocked out with sea stone. His intention was never to throw Luffy into the water, but to move him away so he could first get Kizaru to safety. "Now let's rescue the Admiral," he said and set aside his staff as he advanced towards Luffy's companions. "Get ready," Rayleigh called out as everyone awaited the monkey's approach. But a light appeared in the middle of that path, and Kong looked surprised to the side when a high-speed flame beam flew towards him. Luffy saw this and released the same breath of flames he had used on Jack and Akainu. But this time he increased its speed 90 times to reach in time before the former fleet admiral could react, hitting him squarely at that moment. Luffy's companions barely reacted when the monkey was coming, and a torrent of flames like lightning struck him, covering the golden monkey as he flew with the flames, while everyone tried to protect themselves from the flames and light that attack generated. The fire traveled from the opposite tip of the island where Luffy was to the other side, while heading to the sea, passing through all the cities along that trajectory, and people ran in fear. Kong reappeared in the sky near one of the ports, with the flames heading to the sea. He was in not as good a situation as before, with half of his body charred by it. "Damn, he got me there," he admitted, raising his hand to grab his staff. Luffy tried to lift the staff, but he could not. It seemed heavier to him than anything else he had ever tried to lift. "This staff can only be wielded by me. You can never pick it up again," Kong commented, sensing with the observation haki what was happening from a distance, and Luffy saw the staff beginning to shrink in size as it flew to Kong on the other side of the island. "Damn, I thought that weapon was really cool," Luffy grumbled. He then prepared from that side and flexed his knee, breaking the ground. "Moa Moa no Mi, apply 90 times speed." He commanded internally his fruit and then shot towards Kong. Their fight was just beginning. Chapter 282, Sabaody Archipelago, 18 third-person POV. Sabaody Archipelago, first half of Grand Line. Shaki was standing in front of an old building, listening to the distant explosions and feeling the tremors, when the sound of glass falling inside her establishment occurred. She was smoking, ignoring the explosions and looking towards the sound of a bottle being destroyed by the tremor. "Damn, my 40-year-old whiskey. Someone is going to pay for this. I'll charge 300 million plus interest," she said, exhaling smoke from her cigarette. "Shaki!" She heard someone calling her from a distance, as Hachi was carrying Kami and Bonnie alongside, running towards the woman in front of the building, which had the sign, Shaki's Rip-Off Bar. "Hachi?" She was surprised to see the fishman showing up amidst all that chaos. "Nee, we finally made it. We have to wait for Rayleigh and the others. They were fighting an ex-fleet admiral," Hachi informed, quite worried. "Ex-fleet admiral, Kong," she said with a nostalgic tone from her time at sea. "I heard he was here from the Navy radio I decrypted and that your captain had fought against Kizaru and defeated him, which scared the Marines. Now he's directly battling Kong himself," she stated. "What? Mugiwara defeated Kizaru?" Bonnie couldn't be more surprised while Kami was confused and Hachi sighed in relief. "Anyway, let's go inside. Their fight will take a few hours to resolve." Shaki spoke, wanting to return to her bar and protect her bottles before they all got destroyed. "But what about the others?" Hachi asked, worried about his companions. "They're already on their way," Shaki said as the group approached with Geppo, and Rayleigh, being the only one who couldn't use the technique, came running along with them. Everyone landed in front of them a moment later. "Finally we arrived," Nami commented, relieved. "But what about Luffy?" Vivi exclaimed as the fight continued with explosions and tremors in the distance. "The demon will continue fighting the monkey. I hope he wins, otherwise he won't be worthy of making me a god as soon as I defeat him," Enel complained. "Wolf," Chushu barked at that. "Shut up, Mutt, I'll make you pay later for peeing on me, a man who will become a god," Enel grumbled. "A god!" Kami grimaced as everyone else looked at Enel as if he were an arrogant fool. "This group is really strange anyway. It's been a few days since I last saw him, Rayleigh," Shaki commented, taking another drag while Rayleigh scratched his head. "That's true. I was betting there and I owe some money," he said in an apologetic tone. "Let's talk more later. Come in now. I need to make sure my bottles don't break." She spoke and everyone followed, having no other choices. "I'll leave this admiral here on the street," Hugo said as he carried Kizaru on his shoulder. "Guys!" At that moment, new figures began to emerge from both sides. Chopper, Usopp, Beppo, and Uta appeared on one side, and Kuina, Nojiko, and Robin came from the other, landing at the entrance of the bar in front of the others. "You finally arrived," Yamato commented. "What's happening? The whole place is trembling," Kuina complained. "Who's fighting Luffy?" Usopp commented, not recognizing who could be battling in the distance transformed into a golden monkey. His attention was drawn to the powerful unknown presence at the scene, and he looked at the knocked-out man on the ground. "What? That's a Navy Admiral!" he exclaimed with a grimace. "Navy Admiral!" Chopper also shouted, while Beppo exclaimed along with terror. Uda, Robin, Kuina, and Nojiko frowned at that. "It's a long story," Alvida informed. "Anyway, I'm going to enter this establishment and prepare a drink for the master," Baby 5 said, starting to enter the place. The others followed and all stormed into the bar while Shaki served everyone on the other side of the counter. "So, I've heard a lot about your adventures through the seas. You really know how to draw attention," Shaki commented to them as she rested her hand on her chin and looked at all of them scattered throughout the bar. "Shaki-sama knows about our adventures. We've had many," Shirahoshi commented cheerfully in a chair while swinging her tail. Shaki smiled at the innocent mermaid. "I've received some rather peculiar information about you all. One of them is that you are the daughter of Neptune who was in her room when she disappeared. How did a mermaid from this side of the world end up in the East Blue?" she asked curiously, having heard some channels talk about the disappearance of the mermaid princess and seen her picture on Luffy's lap sitting on the throne of the Goa Kingdom. So it was easy to connect the dots when her appearance matched the description from the Den Den Mushi. "I can't really say," she spoke while touching her chin. I just know I reappeared on a beach by Luffy-sama, and along with Megalo, there was also a prophecy that this would happen. My father was always against it. But then I finally met Luffy-sama. She said, still not quite understanding what happened, but it was amazing for her. After that, I encountered many things I could never have imagined in my life, she concluded. Well, it seems the Straw Hat Boy managed to find many incredible companions, Rayleigh commented, looking at the group. May I know how you all met your captain? He asked, eager to hear a good story as explosions occurred outside and the bar shook occasionally. Yamato nodded and decided to speak first. Luffy also made me appear on that beach, so I owe a lot to him for being free from my father's clutches and the collar he had placed on me, Yamato commented. Boom! Kuina spoke up next, being the first to be summoned by Luffy. Luffy gave me another chance to live, so I owe a lot to him and am pursuing my dream, she said, holding her sword firmly. Well, I didn't like that guy at the beginning, but I don't hate him anymore. Lami commented, crossing her arms, also remembering her summoning on the East Blue Beach. Earthquake. The captain is incredible. He also summoned me, exclaimed Beppo, while Lami had some wrinkles on her forehead. After all, Luffy had practically kidnapped her, and Lami had been beaten that day. Well, Luffy helped me and also gave me the chance to become stronger by opening my eyes to the true strength I would find in the sea, Zoro commented. Soon after, Choo-Choo barked, Woof, woof, boom, earthquake. Nobody understood, only Yamato who decided to speak. Luffy also gave Choo-Choo a chance to become stronger and protect what he loves. Yamato translated Choo-Choo's barking. Luffy also helped me in my hometown. Since then, I am becoming a brave warrior of the sea. Usopp replied with some pride. Earthquake. Well, that guy hit on me, but in the end, I am at sea doing something I never expected to do, and I don't regret it. Raiju spoke. Well, the captain saved me when I was a slave at a marine base, said Hugo. He gave me strength and a chance to avenge my enemies. I've been following him since, Hugo responded firmly. Boom, earthquake. Luffy gave me the opportunity to protect my island, which was being terrorized by Arlong and the others. With the very power I received, I was able to fight them, Nami said. Luffy invited me to go to sea with him and help my sister become strong. I accepted, and today we are married, Nojiko commented. Earthquake. Well, I was doing wrong things, Hachi said, embarrassed and scratching his head, not wanting to face Nami. But Luffy gave me a chance and spared many of my companions' lives. So I've been sailing since then, trying to atone for my sins, Hachi concluded. Boom! Kami looked surprised at Hachi while Bonnie was silent the whole time, listening to each person's story. My husband had known me before everyone else. He punched me saying I was the love of his life, and I met him again in Logatown, like a love story, and we have been together ever since. Alvida said, while many found what she told there bizarre. Boom. Luffy saved my country from a terrible enemy and gave me strength. Well, we got married and now we are sailing together. I hope to have a family soon. Vivi said since Luffy was going to be a father, she wanted to have his child as well. Luffy came to my land. He said we could be friends, even though I was a monster, and told me we could face great adventures at sea. I didn't believe him at first, but in the end, I accepted, and I don't regret it. Today, I have many friends and many adventures, Chopper said, eating cotton candy that Shaggy had given him. Boom! Earthquake! Luffy gave me a new chance at life, and thanks to him, I'm actually living my dream. Robin said, her hand on her chin, but there was a hint of a woman in love in her tone. The demon came to my house and beat me. He made me realize that I was not a true god. Now I'm on the path to becoming one, once I win. Enel spoke in an arrogant tone. Well, Luffy is my childhood friend. When he came to see me, Uda said in an embarrassed tone, thinking about the night they spent together. He invited me to have a life with him. I accepted, since we have a promise, and I don't regret it, she said, also sounding like another woman in love. Well, Master knows very well how to punish this servant. Baby Five spoke while preparing a drink next to Shaggy, while everyone looked at her strangely. Boom! Earthquake. Well, it seems there are many conquests here, but really a good crew. Rayleigh made his final comment after hearing each of their stories. The explosions were still continuing outside. Rayleigh decided to continue. And are you entering the new world? he asked, but Zoro shook his head. It doesn't seem like the captain wants to do anything more. He said something big is going to happen, he said. It's true. Luffy isn't planning to go to the New World now, Nami spoke up right after, confirming what Zoro said. Something big is going to happen? Rayleigh murmured, looking at Shaki at that moment, wondering if she knew anything, but she just shook her head. I want to know more about you all, but I also want to talk more with your captain about your adventures and this strange motivation, Shaki commented. Anyway, we'll know soon, Rayleigh said, as it had been 2 hours since they entered the bar and they were still drinking while the fight continued outside. It was after 3 hours that things finally began to calm down. The sound of footsteps finally came from the door, as Luffy finally appeared at that moment. He was only wearing his pants, which had many tears and burns. He had blood all over his body but kept a smile on his face as he looked around at everyone. It's finally over, he declared. Chapter 283, Sabaody Archipelago 19, third-person POV, Sabaody Archipelago, first half of Grand Line. Luffy, Nami approached him as he finally entered the place. Hello, hope everyone is okay. Luffy greeted them immediately. We are, but what about you? You are quite injured. Alvida spoke with some concern as she approached him. I am. It was a rather invigorating fight, and he said with a satisfied tone. Did you win the fight, Captain? Zoro asked curiously. No, nobody came out victorious. I just managed to go toe-to-toe with him. Despite his age, he proved to be a much tougher opponent than Kizaru, he said. Kizaru seemed to rely a lot on his speed and logia. His endurance was less than many opponents Luffy had faced. Kong has always been a monster in the Navy, Rayleigh commented beside him. What happened then, Luffy? Yamato asked. You could say that he and I made an agreement. I returned Kizaru, who was outside the bar, in exchange for not getting involved there in that fight anymore. Otherwise it would lead nowhere, and we would continue fighting for days, Luffy said. After seeing that the fight would be like this for a long time with no winner, Luffy achieved this condition after talking a bit with Kong. The man, although frustrated, nodded, not wanting to continue like this in the situation the Navy was in at that moment, and ended up taking Kizaru and leaving Sabaody. I see, Zoro commented. Well, anyway, it was quite a show, Luffy commented, looking at the group with interest, even still a bit injured. He approached, going to his servant, who waited with a tray with some things for him, and waited patiently for her master. It's cold in a few hours in these, but it was made with love, Baby Five commented, and Luffy thanked her as he took the juice and drank. You gave up the hostage so easily? Lami complained. It's okay. After all, the Navy can't just ignore what's about to happen, so it's okay. Luffy spoke with confidence that they would not be bothered. Something is going to happen, Shaki commented interestedly. Yes, anyway, it's good to see that everyone is here, even you, Bonnie, Luffy commented as Bonnie looked at him frustrated. I shouldn't have followed you. Look at all the confusion that happened right after, she growled. Relax, it's all fine in the end, Luffy commented and approached Quina. Look, you are the same age. You might even become friends, Luffy commented. What do you mean by that? Both exclaimed. Anyway, he ignored them and looked at Rayleigh, who also maintained an interested gaze on the man who inherited Roger's hat. You are Roger's vice-captain. It's a pleasure to meet you, and you are Shaki, a crew member of the Rocks Pirates, sailing with Charlotte Linlin, Kaido, Shiki, and Whitebeard, Luffy declared with a smile. Seems the Mugiwara boy knows me too. I'm surprised that someone recognizes my past, Shaki commented while her crew was stunned. The same ship with Charlotte Linlin, Kaido, Shiki, and Whitebeard? Everyone screamed at the same time, not knowing this. What kind of crew is this? Usopp shouted, scared. Who is this? Chopper was confused. 3 people he talked about are considered emperors in the New World. Beppo shouted, scared. What? Hachi also exclaimed, not recognizing these names. What kind of crew is this made of monsters? Lami frowned. All of them were just subordinates. Their captain was the worst of all. Luffy shrugged. Ha ha ha, good times, Rayleigh said with a nostalgic tone. Wait, Luffy, are you saying that Roger surpassed this crew? After all, he became the king of the pirates, right? Vivi commented. No, he didn't surpass them, Luffy commented and looked at Rayleigh at that moment. What? The majority quickly exclaimed, not understanding the logic of it. After all, Roger had become the king of the pirates. No, we didn't surpass them, Rayleigh admitted. We joined forces with the Navy to defeat them decades ago. They joined with the Navy? Robin commented before anyone, though all of us didn't understand. The seas were dominated by that group, and no one could stop them. Some things happened that I prefer not to comment, and we ended up joining forces with others to destroy them, Rayleigh said. Despite Luffy wanting to know the real reason behind the battle, he didn't insist since Rayleigh didn't want to talk about it. He looked at Shaki and praised her. You really were in a great crew. I would have liked to fight your captain, as I am interested in seeing the strength of Roger. Luffy admitted, wanting to face the legends of the seas. Rocks and Roger were legendary figures he wished to test his strength against if possible. You think you can fight with that crew? They are monsters, Nami exclaimed in a desperate tone at the idea of Luffy fighting them. Ha ha ha. Well, my captain certainly would have liked to have fought someone like you in our time. Rayleigh laughed at that and spoke. Mugiwara boy is so bold, but surely your crew will surpass ours. Shaki commented, looking at the whole group. Can we surpass those monsters? Bepo shouted alarmingly. I hope so. We have never seen rookies with a crew full of mythical beasts and Logia users at the same time. It's unbelievable. Rayleigh admitted, looking at everyone, it wasn't easy to calculate the impact they would bring to the new world, but if they overcame all the challenges of those waters and survived, they would dominate that sea. Of course we will, Zoro said confidently. Yes. Yamato also nodded. That's it, Shirahoshi shouted. Anyway, I have a question. Rayleigh looked at Luffy with a more serious gaze. What do you hope to achieve in those waters? What is your motivation? He asked, wanting to hear Luffy's reasons. Very simple. I want to find out what the last island has hidden, but I plan to become the emperor of all the seas. What I want is to bring autonomy to all the countries of this world. I want to give freedom to this world. Luffy spoke, thinking of the dark figure of Im at that moment. Emperor of all the seas, give freedom to this world. These words were not exactly Roger's, but Rayleigh respected his ambitions and even sympathized. Seems like a great goal, but are you prepared to face the world? Shaki asked with some admiration. Of course I am. You didn't see the meteor these days going towards Mary Geois. It was my companion who sent it. Luffy spoke calmly while pointing to Bepo, Shaki, Rayleigh, Bonnie. All three who didn't know about this were shocked by it. You can't be serious, Bonnie immediately shouted. It wasn't my fault. I'm sorry. The captain forced me to do it. Bepo immediately shouted, crying. Ha! It was quite fun. I requested it while talking with the 5 elders. Luffy spoke. This is incredible. But wait, I thought only Shiki could do that. Is he dead? Rayleigh asked, surprised. Yes, I killed him. Luffy responded calmly. You what? Why am I surprised by this? Rayleigh was having a hard time digesting all this information. But did the Fuwa no Mi fall into your hands? Shaki asked, equally surprised as her husband. Yes, I have a secret for that, Luffy said, shrugging. You are more shocking than the newspapers show, Rayleigh admitted. Anyway, I would like you to coat one of our ships, Luffy commented. A coating? Rayleigh asked, surprised. Wait, Luffy, didn't you say we weren't going to the New World? Nojiko asked, confused. Yes, I don't intend to go to the New World, but I want to use it for something else, he said, leaving the group quite confused. We are going to split up here again. I plan to take Uda back to Skypiea, he spoke, leaving Uda quite surprised by this. Skypiea? What do you mean by that, Luffy? She exclaimed. We're going to get involved in a war. It's better you don't take part in this. I'm sure it won't be pleasant for you. Luffy spoke, making the girl hesitate. A war? Shaki asked, surprised by this. Yes, there will be a war between the Whitebeard pirates and the entire High Command of the Navy, he said. What? Everyone exclaimed at the same time. Are you serious, Mugiwara boy? Shaki asked, stunned. Yes, the Navy has Ace of the Fire Fists, and they intend to execute him soon. I bet tomorrow the newspaper will be going around the world about this. He spoke. Ace? Your brother, Luffy? Kuina exclaimed. Yes, of course. I don't intend to let him die at the hands of the Navy. Even if the Whitebeard pirates won't go to the war with the Navy, I plan to go to Marineford, even if I have to do it alone. Luffy spoke firmly. After all, he would never let Ace die, even if he had to face all the forces alone. "Wait, how do you know all this?" Lami exclaimed, looking at Luffy. "I had a conversation with someone special just now," Luffy said. He had just handed over Kizaru to a scowling Kong, who did not like the situation at all. It was after he left that his Den Den Mushi rang, and Kuma was calling Luffy, first talking about Ace, something Luffy had already suspected was happening. The changes in this world hadn't altered Ace's fate, and he had been captured. Another reason, and the most important one for Kuma calling Luffy, was about the situation with his sister. "What's the plan, Captain?" "After all, we can't let you go to this war alone." Hugo spoke. "Yes, Captain. If you're going, we're going too," Yamato said firmly. "A battle with the Navy elite. That sounds very interesting." Zoro spoke. "Probably Mihawk will be there," Luffy said, and Zoro nodded with satisfaction. "Yes, let's fight with Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi spoke. "Nee, I'm going too," Hachi spoke firmly. "Of course, we're participating," Reiju said. "Yes." Usopp spoke, even though he was crying. "Is that what you meant in Thriller Bark?" Nojiko remembered Luffy saying they would go to war with the Navy, but he hadn't mentioned why. "I'm not going to let you go alone while your brother is in danger of death," Nami exclaimed, though she was crying like Usopp. After all, the idea of entering a war with the world's strongest pirate and the Navy elite seemed terrifying. All the others agreed too, and Luffy nodded, satisfied with his crew, those he could always count on. "This is really surprising. You really know how to surprise a woman of my age," Shaki spoke right after that. "It's true," Rayleigh also admitted. After all, Luffy has been surprising him at every turn since they finally met. "Ha ha ha! Well, let's start with the plan. After all, we have many interesting things to do, and I plan to go to Impel Down and invade the prison along with most of you," he declared with a smile, while the group was speechless at what their captain had said. Chapter 284, Sabaody Archipelago, 20, third-person POV. Sabaody Archipelago, first half of Grand Line. A silence fell over the place as everyone looked at Luffy, waiting to know what he planned to do. "First, I have a question. Are you going to participate in this war?" Luffy looked at Rayleigh first. "No," he commented, picking up a bottle from the counter and drinking. "Can I know why?" "Not that I'm judging you. I will respect your decision. I'm just curious," Luffy said, while the crew looked confused, as no one knew this was Roger's son, their former captain. "Because it's an insult to Whitebeard and even to my old enemies. I would even be shaming my own captain if I did that. Everyone chooses their own path and has their own crew, but not that I think you shouldn't get involved in this war. After all, he is your foster brother, right?" Rayleigh spoke. After all, he had no bond with Roger's son, and Whitebeard would take care of it, as Ace belonged to his crew. "I understand. I just wanted to know exactly what you thought about it," Luffy said, looking at him. "But it's okay. I can understand that." Luffy spoke with a smile and looked at his crew. "Well, we'll split into 3 groups leaving this island," Luffy began. "3 groups? Aren't we all going to participate in the war?" Quina asked. "Yes, we are, but I want part of you to go to the New World. Enel, with his flying ship, will be my best option," Luffy said while Enel raised an eyebrow. "Not just that, I want you to learn to do this thing." Luffy showed a paper and took it to the Thunder Logia user. He took it and started reading. As an engineer, he wasn't a fool to understand it. "This," Enel murmured. "Yes, I want you to learn to create static fields with your Akuma no Mi that interfere with all communication devices. If you learn to do that, we can attack enemies without them being able to call for reinforcements," Luffy said, and Enel nodded, interested. "What do you intend to do, Luffy? Go to the New World?" Nojiko asked, curious. "I want to take some hostages before going to the war. Unfortunately, we couldn't catch those we knocked down, but we will do that soon before the government suspects anything," Luffy said with a rogue smile. "Hostages," Vivi murmured. "In any case, the other group will be Bepo," he began, leaving the polar bear a little confused. "Me, Captain?" He scratched his head. "Yes, we need you to take Big Mom's son on our ship with the Germa to Skypiea," Luffy said. After all, he needed to get rid of this burden. He looked at Bonnie at that moment. "Bonnie, will you join him? I intend to leave you in a place where you can train and strengthen, both you and your crew for the fleet, But I want you in the main crew, Luffy said, surprising some as they looked at the pink-haired girl. After all, it was surprising that Luffy was inviting someone else to the group. I never said I agreed to join your crew, Bonnie exclaimed. Don't be like that. I'll wait for your decision until the end of the war. Then, I hope you come with me, Luffy said, and the girl fell silent after that. So where will the third group go, Luffy? Nami asked. It will be the main group with our ship. That's why I need Rayleigh to coat the Black Pearl. We are going to attack one of the world government's structures by going underwater, Luffy said. One of the great structures, like Eni's lobby, what's left is Marineford and Impel Down. Impel Down? Shaki commented, stunned by Monkey D. Luffy's audacity. We are going to attack the largest prison in the world, where all the worst criminals are. Usopp shouted, alarmed by that, and everyone looked stunned at Luffy. Yes, we are going to invade the prison, Luffy confirmed. Wait, Luffy, but we would need to use the government gates to navigate those waters, which won't be possible otherwise. Sailing through more water won't help much. Nami exclaimed. Yes, generally it would be like that, but we have Shira. She can ask the Sea Kings to pull our ship from the bottom of the sea. No current can stop us from sailing, Luffy said, and immediately looked at Usopp. I want you to install thick chains on the ship while Rayleigh is doing his work, he requested. Usopp, still stunned, nodded, while everyone agreed with Luffy's reasoning. Rayleigh and Shaki were doubtful about his words. After all, was Luffy saying that the mermaid controlled the Sea Kings? What kind of power is that? We're going to rescue your brother in Impel Down, Zoro asked, being one of the few who were not afraid to invade the prison. No, we won't have time for that. We need Enel to learn his new power to start the plan. Cutting off our enemy's communication will be essential for the success of our operations, Luffy said while planning to strengthen Enel's power several times over in the coming days. The maintenance of the ship will also take a few days, right, Rayleigh? Luffy said while the old man nodded. I intend to spend a few days analyzing our plans and helping you with every aspect of them, Luffy said. Luffy, if we're not going to save your brother in Impel Down, what are we going to do in the prison? Lami asked. A person close to me is imprisoned due to the coming war. It's time to get them, Luffy said mysteriously, and since his captain didn't seem to want to reveal it, he probably wouldn't, even if they insisted. After all, he wanted to leave that for when he reached the 6th level of the submerged prison. After Impel Down, are we going to war, Captain? Hugo asked. Yes, although I want you with Enel in the New World, we will meet before invading Impel Down to create the static field in the prison and invade it. It will be a fairly easy task for our current strength, so don't worry, Luffy said confidently. So we're going to invade Impel Down and go to the war in Marineford, Reiju murmured. Exactly. It's time for the world to fear us, and this war will make everyone see that we are the force that will dominate the seas, Luffy said with a smile. That's really incredible to hear. Mugiwara boy, Shaki commented. This generation is proving to be unbeatable. Rayleigh also commented. This is good. The Navy won't bother us anymore, will they, Captain? Zoro asked. No, Luffy replied with a tone of certainty. The Navy and the world government wouldn't bother them with this upcoming war, so Luffy was ready to surprise them. That's good. Then I'm going to train, Zoro commented, starting to leave. I'll train too, Kuina said, leaving with Zoro. She wanted to have a fight with the current strongest swordsman in the world like Zoro. This was a great opportunity. Great. We'll leave here in a few days, so train or do whatever you want. Those who want to grow faster, find me while I'm with Enel, Luffy commented. After all, his strength was very good after leaving Skypiea. A few days of training wouldn't change much. The members around the bar nodded while Zoro and Kuina were already leaving. Some were thoughtful about what to do. Among them were those who wanted to train and those who wanted to enjoy the island more. I'll just ask Beppo to take Uta and our prisoners to Skypiea. After all, this will be the longest trip and will take days. So he can join us in the war, Luffy said, and Uta nodded. She really didn't want to go into the middle of a war full of deaths, but she understood Luffy's reason for participating to save his brother. Well, can you show me your ship? I heard you usually carry it in your pocket, Rayleigh commented, and Luffy nodded. Yes, Let's go outside to start our work, Luffy said, and they started to leave shortly after. Luffy placed his ship by pulling it out of his pocket, and it grew until it hit the ground with a loud sound in the area. It's a beautiful and quite intimidating ship. Who built it? Rayleigh asked curiously, and Luffy didn't quite know how to answer that question. Well, no one, Luffy replied. I got it in the East Blue, but it's hard to explain. But no one built this ship, Luffy murmured. After all, it was a modification made by the system. I think I can understand that, Rayleigh said, although he didn't understand anything. Anyway, let's start working on it. It's good to have it here, so I don't have to go to the port to do it, Rayleigh said and jumped onto the ship. Enel, I want you to start studying the papers. I'll be with you soon. As for the rest of you, feel free to enjoy the island or train, Luffy said to his crew, then looked at the last two members. Bippo and Uda, I'll get the prisoners and put them on the Sunny tomorrow. You can leave then. Speaking of which, I think I'll visit them in the prison, he said, and both nodded, though Bippo would need his black power wig later for that. Luffy jumped onto the ship while Rayleigh analyzed the place before starting to work and entered the ship, heading to the prison. Hello. Luffy appeared, greeting everyone in the place, where all the members of Germa were on one side and Cracker on the other, all chained. Mugiwara, Cracker growled, while Reiju's family growled at Luffy. Don't be so enraged, Luffy said, walking close to them. Do you know what you're doing? My mother will soon be sending troops here. You've angered a Yonko, remember that, Cracker growled. What did you think would happen when you came to threaten me? Know that I'm not afraid of Big Mom, and when I enter the New World, I'm going to bring her down, Luffy said firmly, leaving Cracker a little stunned by that declaration. Before he could say anything, Luffy continued, and even if she's angry with me and preparing troops, she'll soon stop that. After all, tomorrow there will be news of a war between a Yonko and the Navy. I doubt she'll miss the opportunity to seize new territories with that, Luffy commented while Cracker looked at him, wondering whether to believe Luffy's words or not. Anyway, that doesn't matter. You'll be going to my prison. I'll decide what to do with you after the war, Luffy commented. His gaze turned to the Vinsmoke family. Let me ask you a question. Luffy began. I haven't killed you yet because Reiju asked me not to, but understand that she no longer belongs to your family, so you better not try anything with her, Luffy said in a threatening tone. He might not want to kill a chained enemy, but he could release them if he was determined to kill them and give them a chance to defend themselves. Judge looked at Luffy with clenched teeth but said nothing. Tell me, where is Sanji? Luffy asked curiously. After all, Sanji exists in this world. Sanji? What about him? One of the brothers looked at Luffy strangely, wondering why he was interested in that guy. He married my sister. It wasn't the family members who answered, but Cracker. Your sister? Luffy was surprised. So he was with Pudding? Luffy thought. Yes, we've had an alliance with Big Mom for over a year. Sanji was the bargaining chip. He lives in Whole Cake, Judge said calmly. I see. Well, I'll arrange for some special food to be brought to you. After all, tomorrow you'll be leaving for my base. Luffy finished before turning around and leaving. Chapter 285, Sabaody Archipelago 21. Third-person POV. Sabaody Archipelago, first half of Grand Line. Luffy came out of the ship while Rayleigh was already working on the ship with a bubble machine and tools next to the deck. Luffy continued his way to the deck of the ship while he saw his crew on the side of the ship, though some were missing, wanting to visit places on the island. It was already afternoon, so there were a few hours before nightfall. Enel and others, come with me, Luffy asked, and Enel clicked his tongue before following Luffy to the side where the ground had been destroyed by Luffy and Kong. Meanwhile, the island was recovering from the confrontation that happened that day. Several trees had been cut down and burned, mainly from the fight between Luffy and Kizaru. At least 8 giant trees had fallen, and all these parts of the island had become unrecognizable. Many civilians suffered from this fight, with trees falling in the middle of the city. Kong was at the port while the Marines carried Kizaru on a hidden stretcher to the ship, and the Marines looked without knowing what to say or do. Just take him back to headquarters. He needs to rest for the next conflict where he will be needed, Kong told the present Vice Admiral. Yes, Lord Kong, he replied with determination. And the Tenryubitos? Kong asked him. They are on a safe ship to Mary Geoise, he replied. I understand. I will escort this ship then. Kong commented, so that nothing would happen to the Tenryubito until they reached Mary Geoise. Kong was covered in blood from the intense fight and had several cuts as Luffy showed on his body. There was no winner in this battle, and both showed they had the same power. But what about the Straw Hat Pirates? Are we just going to leave them like this? A recruit murmured beside him and trembled when Kong looked at him. He wasn't angry at the question. I know you thirst for justice, young one, but this is not the time yet. I made a deal with their captain as this fight led nowhere, and I intend to keep it, Kong said. After all, he wasn't like Akainu who lied. His words were true, and he usually kept everything that came out of his mouth. Pero, pero, pero. His den mushi started ringing, and he knew very well who it was calling, so he looked at the Marines. I must go. You take care of all this destruction and take Kizaru away. We will deal with the pirates in the future. Kong said, and before anyone could react, he jumped with Geppo and flew up, heading to the Marine ship going to the Holy City. Hello, he said, picking up the den mushi in the air. We heard what happened there. He took down an admiral. The voice of one of the elders didn't sound pleasant. Yes, Kizaru was taken down by the Mugiwara, then we fought in our beast forms. Kong commented. Is he stronger than you? The elder didn't seem in a good mood asking this question. No, in fact we tied, Kong said while taking a big leap off the island and walking on the ocean, trying to reach the ship going to the Red Mountain. Even so, this is very concerning, a third one exclaimed. First of all, tell me one thing. Did you find the user of the Fua no Mi in the group? The fourth asked with a more urgent question. No, none of the pirates I fought used this fruit, and they all had a fruit, Kong concluded. So the user wasn't among them. Tell us about all of them and everything that happened. We will eliminate them all and find out who might have this power. They said, and Kong began to recount everything that happened. So among the members not seen in the fight are the women, Quina, with the power of ice, Nojiko with the power of the bomb, Nico Robin, whom we already know what power she possesses, Chopper, who seems to have a strange fruit but not the Fua, Uta, who possesses the music fruit. This leaves us with only two suspects, who did not appear at Ini's lobby, Bippo and Usopp. One of them has Shiki's power. We will keep a special eye on these two in the group. The elders concluded while Kong nodded and turned off the den mushi a moment later. He landed on the Marine ship while there was a Tenryubito bleeding and shouting at everyone. Where are those idiots who attacked us? I want them dead. Immediately, bring me all of them. The Tenryubito snarled as Kong landed, sighing because he would have to endure the fury of that celestial dragon. Meanwhile, back in Sabori, the worst generation was hiding, watching the Marine ships taking the wounded away. Among them, there were copies of Kuma being carried like broken scrap after being easily destroyed by Reiju and Lamy, while Kizaru's nephew, the Fat Man, was also taken on the same ship as the Admiral, unconscious on a stretcher. It seems the glory of the Marines didn't last long, Scratchman-Apu commented after arriving at the port. Tsk. X-Drake clenched his teeth at that. We didn't even have a chance, Urouge commented nearby, with his whole body burned and injured, just from receiving a blast from a pacifista. And to think he actually defeated the Admiral. Bege was no different from Urouge, but stunned that Basil had predicted Luffy defeating Kizaru. The Straw Hats are far ahead of us, and it's not just the captain. That crew is made up of monsters. Basil commented. At least the Marines are gone, which I don't understand, but I'll enjoy my stay on this island a bit more before heading to Fishman Island, Scratchman-Apu said. That's strange. Let me see. The chance of the Marines returning to this island with a powerful force. 5%. Basil saw that, surprised. Chance of something big happening. 100%. He murmured, even more scared. Something big is going to happen? Biji approached, looking more confident in Basil's predictions. It seems so, but what will happen? And it won't be on this island, he murmured. Many reporters were scouring the area, taking photos of the aftermath of the conflict, wanting to publish in tomorrow's newspaper. while writing articles and interviewing witnesses all over the island. While the Marines took care of the injured civilians and the Marine ship left the port, finally returning to Marineford, Luffy was training with Enel in the middle of the destroyed forest with other members of his crew until nightfall. When night came, all the crew members gathered and had a banquet in front of Shaki's bar while the ship was anchored next to them. I saw several reporters around the island. Do you think we'll be in tomorrow's newspaper? Kuina asked while looking for Zoro after he got lost following their training session. Most likely. After all, we beat up Tenryubitos, Luffy said. Although I'm not sure if there will be news about Ace tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, he added. The banquet continued with Rayleigh and Shaki also participating, drinking and eating with everyone. Bonnie didn't leave and ended up bringing her crew to stay at the corner watching the banquet. Despite participating, they didn't mingle with Luffy and the others. It was early morning when the crew boarded the ship and slept in their cabins. The next day, as Luffy had predicted, the news of the Straw Hats beating up 5 Tenryubitos was in all the newspapers around the world. It began with Luffy walking through the streets of the island, carrying St. Charlos by the hair while appearing all bruised. The photo showed Shirahoshi and Bonnie behind Luffy, with more photos following this one showing all the Tenryubitos injured by all the pirates at the auction. I'm also on the cover as an accomplice? Bonnie began to cry upon seeing that, her reputation now tarnished, and she would be even more pursued by the world government. Ha ha ha! You look great there! Luffy came to her side and laughed. In the photo, she was shown with her hand on her hip, arguing with him. That's not cool at all! Bonnie snarled with a grimace. What will the world say about us? Hugo asked. Haha, I look great in the photo riding that fish, Yamato exclaimed, looking at her photo on top of the Tenryubito while riding that thing. Some crew members didn't care, but many of them, the more cowardly ones, were crying rivers at that moment. It's over. First we dropped a meteor on Mary Geoise, now we beat up Tenryubitos. What will become of us? They exclaimed. You guys seem to forget that our captain already killed a Tenryubito. Zoro mocked. He what? Rayleigh, Shaki, and Bonnie shouted at this information. It was only 2. Luffy shrugged while Bonnie seemed to have lost her soul at that moment, and Shaki and Rayleigh didn't know what to comment about it. After a while, Luffy dressed Beppo in his wig, and he finally seemed to have the courage with the prisoners being taken to Sunny Go along with Uta and Beppo. They then departed, heading for Skypiea. Meanwhile, people all over the world were reading the newspaper and being shocked by the facts reported in the papers. East Blue. They beat up a group of... Whoop-Slap fainted at that moment while reading the newspaper in the throne room of Goa. They are doing so well at sea, the Queen said with a smile while seeming happy, while everyone looked at her crying, begging her not to cheer for pirates beating up Tenryubitos, as it could lead to the kingdom's downfall. Somewhere in the New World. Dragon, your son, look at what he did, someone shouted to the leader of the revolutionaries. Calm Belt. Sister, have you seen the newspaper? Boa Hancock's 2 sisters entered the place while the other should have been resting but was also looking at the newspaper and crying. Yes, he really beat up a Tenryubito. Boa Hancock seemed very happy about it. Paradise Grand Line. Captain. A man approached with the newspaper. I know. He's in the Sabaody archipelago, the man with green hair said. He left his cabin and went to the deck while his crew gathered. Listen up, everyone. Our next target is the Sabaody archipelago, he said on the ship's bow to the crew, while everyone raised their hands and shouted. The ship's figurehead was different, with the face of a flaming monster with purple fire. He had another figurehead some time ago, but had to change it in Water 7 to one with the iconic Straw Hat Man, and ended up putting another form of this same iconic man. After all, he was a big fan of Luffy. Let's get to Sabaody as fast as possible, he exclaimed. Yes, Captain Bartolomeo. The crew quickly resumed setting the ship to sail. We'll meet soon, Luffy-senpai, Bartolomeo exclaimed with stars in his eyes. Chapter 286, Calm Before the Storm 01, Third-Person POV, Sabaody Archipelago, First Half of Grand Line. After the news about Luffy and his crew beating up a group of Tenryubito, and the most frightened ones had passed through their period of depression, they They returned to their activities during the day. "Luffy, shouldn't we keep the Marines from approaching here?" Usopp said, observing with his observation haki a group not only of Marines but also wearing world government suits. "Yes," Luffy agreed while releasing a conqueror's haki, causing all the people in that area who weren't his companions to fall to the ground unconscious. "There," Luffy commented, smiling. "Your haki isn't bad." Rayleigh spoke with some admiration. "I may not have had a teacher, but I got a good manual." Luffy replied, "You guys haven't even been at sea for a year, and you're already like this. It seems you could surpass us in less than a decade." Rayleigh said with a smile, "That's a long time. We'll do it much sooner." Zoro spoke for Luffy at that moment. "Haha, I'd like to see that." Rayleigh didn't seem offended and laughed. Anyway, Luffy cut off the subject and turned to Usopp. "You have the best observation haki among us. Any sense that we're being spied on, inform me." Luffy said, not wanting them to be seen training Enel, although Luffy planned to go to the Calm Belt tomorrow. "Hancock called you earlier, didn't she?" Nami seemed to read Luffy's thoughts when he was planning to start training with Enel. "Yes, she wanted to meet me, so I intend to go to Amazon Lily and stay a few days. After all, when Enel learns the basics, he needs a place to try to create a static field large enough to cover at least half an island for the war." Luffy said, despite wanting to enjoy some time with the mother of his first daughters, he still spoke rationally. "Sk, fine." Nami seemed to be jealous. "You know you can enjoy a few hours with me if you're not satisfied. I promise we'll sneak away in the middle of the banquet," Luffy said in a seductive tone in Nami's ear. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms while a blush appeared on her face. Luffy returned to training with Enel from a distance while he generated lightning in the isolated area. The rest of the island heard the thunder explosions from a distance coming from the isolated forest, while people could only look without approaching. This continued throughout the entire day, while the other members took the opportunity to train. Rayleigh coded the ship, and some members strolled around the island, like Yamato buying another fish bike with her money. During the night, with the banquet, Nami ended up being stolen by Luffy while they went to have sex in some isolated place on the island for a few hours, and afterward, Luffy had another session of sex with his entire harem. The next day, the big news reached everyone. Fire Fist Ace will be executed in a week. This phrase shocked the world even more than Luffy beating a Tenryubito and appearing on the cover of the previous day. This can't be possible. They're going to execute the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates? Whitebeard will never let that happen. A war. There's going to be a war. The Marines want to face the world's strongest pirate? What are they thinking? It's not just that. This war will change the world. Citizens shouted all over the globe crazily with the day's newspaper. However, this couldn't be said of the world's greatest forces. "Where's Cracker? Why hasn't he returned with the brats?" Big Mom screamed madly, losing her patience as there had been no news of one of her strongest sons for days with Germa. "He'll come soon, Mama. He's just delayed." The children tried to calm the fury of that Yonko before everyone became her target. "We need to do something, Katakuri," Smoothie exclaimed beside her. "I know. I'm going to paradise soon," he replied with his arms crossed while covering his mouth with a cloth. "Damn, Cracker. How could you fall like this?" Smoothie exclaimed, while Big Mom didn't suspect what really happened. Her children already knew, but didn't want to reveal it to her as it was too dangerous, preferring to act on their own and recover Cracker than face her wrath. Katakuri was about to speak, but suddenly a biscuit soldier entered the breakfast room with a newspaper. "Mama, Mama!" he screamed. Big Mom glared while eating her morning sweet, as it interrupted her from savoring the taste. "Urgent news! You must see this. A war between Whitebeard and the Marines is going to happen," the biscuit soldier shouted, and Big Mom looked stunned at these words while quickly moving her hand to grab the newspaper. She couldn't believe what she was reading. "This means the old man will fall," she exclaimed very happily and looked at her children. "We'll have to do this without Cracker here. Gather all the men to send in different directions of the new world. Let's prepare to steal all of Whitebeard's territories while that old man dies at Marineford." Big Mom exclaimed as everyone began to act quickly. Smoothie looked at Katakuri, frowning. It seemed that his journey to paradise would have to wait without Big Mom knowing what happened to her son. Meanwhile, in the territory of Wano. Haha, it seems the news has come. Kaido looked at the newspaper while already preparing some of his ships. We will attack Whitebeard, he demanded. Kaido wanted Whitebeard's territories, but first he wanted to attack them directly, because this would be the last opportunity to fight the old man, as he was sure that Newgate would fall at Marineford. And as Kaido was a brutal warrior, believing everything was based on strength, he didn't want to miss the opportunity to come out victorious against the strongest man in the world before this war. Come on, men! Let's intercept the Whitebeard pirates, he shouted as his ships began to leave Wano towards the beginning of the New World to anticipate his adversary. Elsewhere in the New World, on an unknown island. Shanks frowned, looking at the newspaper. It seemed that everything he feared had happened, and this could be the end of his captain's son. Damn, Shanks couldn't help but complain, while his crew stayed quiet around him, observing. It wasn't hard to guess that Whitebeard would go to war, even if it meant his end. He would still face the Marines head-on. Tell me, what are Kaido's activities? Shanks asked his second-in-command, Ben Beckman. Kaido was preparing for something before anyone else. He will head to sea with his main members. Kaido's sudden activities were observed by many forces in the New World, which means that guy already knew this would happen through some contact. Shanks frowned, and knowing that dragon, it's very likely he's going to intercept Whitebeard, Ben Beckman concluded. So he plans to fight Whitebeard, Shanks murmured with a serious look. The Marines aren't being hasty, Ben Beckman analyzed. What do you mean? Yasopp asked. The Marines won't have to just deal with Whitebeard, but also his son's crew, Yasopp, Ben Beckman commented. Luffy? Lucky Roo asked. That makes sense. Luffy would never let his brother be executed, Yasopp commented. Besides, Ben Beckman continued, Luffy can't be considered to have the strength of a Yonko, but certainly his entire crew has such strength, he reasoned. The Marines are overloading themselves, but I still doubt they would do this without a plan. They know that Luffy being as notorious as he is now, they will be prepared for him with the world government. Shanks spoke calmly. What will we do, Captain? Lucky Roo asked. He sighed and looked seriously at everyone. Prepare the ship. We are not going to Marineford, after all. This is something Whitebeard must resolve alone, and it would be an insult to interfere in this fight. But still, we will stop Kaido and leave the way clear so that Newgate can save Ace. He spoke seriously as everyone began to move. It's time to sail to the beginning of the New World. And so they departed. Elsewhere in the New World, amidst the waters, on the ship of the main target of this war, the news fell upon all the division captains and all their subordinates, while Whitebeard stared fixedly at the newspaper fallen at his feet with the picture of Ace imprisoned. Pops, what will we do? One of the captains asked cautiously. Whitebeard waited for a moment and looked seriously at all his crew. Isn't it obvious? We will rescue Ace, he said firmly. Whitebeard then stood up, grabbing his weapon and striking it against the floor, making the entire ship tremble. Listen, everyone. Summon all our allies in our fleet. We are going to Marineford, and even if we have to destroy the Marines, we will save Ace, he shouted as everyone exclaimed, preparing for war. The countdown to the war began at that moment, 7 days starting from today. The war would start, and the world was beginning to prepare for such an event. Ships from all over the Grand Line went to Sabaody with journalists to cover this war. After all, that location would broadcast all the images of the war, an idea by Sengoku to show the power of the Marines. But it wasn't just Sabaody. Several points around the world would have their own screens to show how the Marines eliminate the world's strongest pirate. In Marineford. You finally arrived from Impel Down, Garp, Sengoku commented, looking at his old friend. He didn't look the same, appearing 10 years older. I resolved my things, he said after going to Impel Down twice in a row. I can understand. Family is a complicated thing, but you know it was the best thing to do. Sengoku commented with a rarely reciprocal tone, even after everything that was happening to him. I know, but I'm afraid she won't see the Marines with the same eyes, he commented. She will understand. Sengoku said, and Garp nodded as he began to leave the room. Sengoku didn't stop him as he closed the door and sat in his chair. His Den Mushi rang from the medical wing at that moment. "Hello, Fleet Admiral. We have a discharge with the Shichibukai Doflamingo," the doctor said. "He woke up. That's good," Sengoku exclaimed as one of their forces finally came out of the coma. "But sir, he is not in a good mood. He doesn't let anyone get close," said the doctor with some fear. Doflamingo was not having an easy time. He lost the fingers of one hand and the other arm, waking up severely injured. He would stay that way forever, so his hatred for that group was all that filled his mind at that moment. "Damn. I'll come by later," Sengoku said and hung up the phone. Sengoku sighed. At least one less problem. The war is coming, and this was the opportunity I've always wanted to create, a fight that can destroy the great era of pirates, showing the power of the Marines and the world government to the entire world. Roger's era will finally come to an end with the fall of these two groups, he murmured while looking at a poster of Whitebeard and another of Monkey D. Luffy side by side on his desk. Chapter 287, Calm Before the Storm, Third-Person POV. Saboti Archipelago, First Half of Grand Line. While the world was preparing for the battle that would take place at the execution square of Marineford, the supernovas were also shocked by it, and decided not to head to the New World to witness the war. Luffy had left Sabaody at this moment, departing with Enel to the Calm Belt. He spent some time with Enel training on a deserted island near Amazon Lily. After witnessing Enel creating statistical and spherical lightning explosions while trying to create the static field Luffy wanted, he left the man to train for a few hours while he left the island. It didn't take long for Luffy to find himself in a rather pleasant scenario, lying on a clean bed with his wife beside him, sitting after a session of sex in the Kuja Castle's royal bedroom. Hancock had a joyful expression while they ate something together. "How are you, my love?" Hancock asked in her sweet and passionate tone to Luffy. "It's great. I couldn't have chosen better," Luffy commented, looking at her breasts as she displayed them in front of him. "I'm not talking about that, silly." Hancock laughed at Luffy's charm. "The food," she said cheerfully. "It's great, too," Luffy said as she cuddled up to him like a loving couple. Luffy began to speak again, feeling the warmth of his wife. "I saw the Marine ship when I came to the island by air." He commented on the subject he hadn't cared about until now. "That's true. Vice Admiral Momonga came to summon me for the war. I turned them to stone, except for Momonga himself, who stabbed his hand to avoid being petrified." She spoke with disdain. "I see," Luffy commented as Hancock looked back at him. "What are your plans for the war? I will accept to go as you asked and help you on the battlefield to save your brother." Hancock spoke. "I'm organizing myself and will start by attacking Impel Down first, but I won't be saving my brother," Luffy commented. "Impel Down? Won't that attract the Marine forces against you?" Hancock asked, surprised. "If they discover me, yes, but I intend to do it during the war. They will have no choice but to keep the largest concentration of soldiers directly in the fight against Whitebeard," Luffy said. "I understand. Either way, we will save your brother," she commented, and Luffy nodded. "Yes, we will," he said confidently. "I will fight by your side, like a loving couple," she declared, and Luffy laughed. "I'd like you not to overexert yourself. We have our daughters, so I want you to take care of them. Leave the rest to me." Luffy spoke while Hancock nodded. They ended up spending more time in the room, having 2 or 3 more sessions of sex until the afternoon arrived and Luffy decided to walk around the castle in a robe. Hancock's room was quite exclusive, with almost no one allowed to approach, but the same couldn't be said for Hancock's sisters and Gloriosa. "Good morning, sisters-in-law. How are you?" Luffy said as he left the room while Hancock slept a bit. He said good morning even though it was afternoon since he hadn't seen them yet today. Sandersonia and Marigold looked at Luffy coming out of the room while holding a bottle of rum in his hand, wearing a robe. "Monkey D. Luffy?" Marigold commented, not knowing what to say. Luffy had arrived at the castle and went straight to Hancock's room without talking to anyone else. It was a bit of a tricky situation with Luffy walking around as if he owned the place, even though he was married to the queen. "You're late," A new voice emerged as Gloriosa jumped with her small body from outside the window into the corridor where they were. "Hello, Gloriosa. I've been quite busy these days, but I finally managed to come here," Luffy commented with a smile. "You created a big chaos in Sabaudi, hitting a Tenryubito in public?" she said, worried. "Don't worry about that. The government knows I've already killed 2 of them. They should thank me for not making things worse with the last 5 of them." Luffy laughed, causing Gloriosa to fall to the ground. "You killed 2 of them?" Both Gloriosa, Marigold, and Sandersonia exclaimed. After all, Luffy had shared this information exclusively with Hancock when they first met. "You are crazy!" Gloriosa shouted with all her might. "Ha ha ha! Don't be so nervous. Anyway, let's talk." Luffy laughed and spoke while Gloriosa tried to recover. "All right," she said in the end as they started to walk towards a balcony. Hancock's sisters remained silent beside them while Luffy and Gloriosa began to talk. "So, have you seen the marine ship stationed in our waters?" Gloriosa asked. "Yes. Hancock said she would agree to go to this war, even though I didn't want her to," Luffy commented, not wanting her to take any risks. "You know that's out of the question. She must participate in the war, and there is something I fear a lot." Gloriosa began, looking at Luffy with a serious expression. "However, there is still a chance that the government will classify her as a traitor if she helps you in the war, and knowing that woman, she won't refrain from doing anything." Luffy heard this and nodded. "I know, but don't worry, I have my own means to protect you if the world government tries anything," Luffy said confidently. "What would that be?" she asked, curious, as she still wanted the security of this kingdom more than anyone. "I'm thinking of removing this island from here and taking it to my own territory if the world government classifies Amazon Lily as an enemy of the world," Luffy replied, leaving everyone present surprised. "You can do that?" Gloriosa asked. "Yes, after this war, no one will make any big moves in the world for a while, so it's very likely they will try to attack you. And even if Hancock is seen as an enemy of the government, the Shichibukai program has an expiration date. When that time comes, I'll remove this island from here, and everyone will be safe." Luffy spoke with confidence. "If you can do that, then I believe in you," Gloriosa said. "Anyway, Hancock will come with me after this war. She can't show her pregnancy. If the world government associates that she is carrying my daughters, they will try everything to kill her, even if it affects you." Luffy spoke in a serious tone. Gloriosa agreed. Luffy was the man who had shown the greatest potential in this era, already having a significant history due to his father being the world's worst criminal. Of course, the world government would do everything to prevent his lineage from surviving. "Wait, Luffy," Sandersonia spoke. "We still need to make our trips with our ship to bring loot to the island." "Don't worry, I'll provide all the necessary resources for this kingdom throughout Hancock's pregnancy. After all, I have many kingdoms at my disposal." Luffy smiled at the sisters. "Well, it seems you've thought of many things. It's good to know you have things under control then," Gloriosa commented. "Anyway, I'd like to take some of your warriors to train with my people. I can make all of them powerful warriors within a year," Luffy said, and Gloriosa pondered this. Luffy was creating armies in all his territories. Despite only training those from Skypiea, he intended to gather a force from each of his kingdoms to form a batch to protect his territories and fight by his side when the time came. "That sounds good. Let's do it." Gloriosa, despite being a former queen, had the authority to say this, although Hancock would agree with anything Luffy said. "Luffy." At that moment, Hancock appeared, jumping on Luffy again. "You left me alone in bed," she complained. "Sorry for that, my love. I was discussing important things about our future," Luffy said. "Our future? Are we going to have another wedding? Perhaps a second honeymoon?" she exclaimed passionately while Luffy smiled awkwardly, as this woman only thought about that. "Well, if you all will excuse me," Luffy said, heading back to the room with Hancock while all the other women sighed at that. "Anyway, we won't talk again before the war, but as soon as possible, we'll go over all the details of everything we discussed," Luffy said, and Gloriosa nodded as he went back to the room to enjoy his last moments with Hancock. It was only after about 2 hours that Luffy finally finished his 5th ejaculation into Hancock in just one day. As the woman felt satisfied, he said, "I'm going now. I need to check on the progress of my crew member." Luffy commented while Hancock nodded tiredly. "All right, we'll see each other at the war then," she said, and Luffy kissed her before starting to leave. "Remember, be careful and don't overexert yourself. Let your husband act and take care of everything," Luffy said, and Hancock nodded. After that, he jumped into the air, starting to ascend hundreds of meters until he reached 2 kilometers in the air and began to head towards the island where he left Enel. Vice Admiral Momonga was on his ship when he noticed something strange moving in the air above the island. "A strange bird?" he murmured, as it wasn't possible to see with his observation haki due to the distance. Luffy continued his way over the sea until he passed the horizon, leaving Amazon Lily behind him and heading towards an island where lightning was forming a spherical force, covering at least half of it. Enel was almost managing to execute that ability, but he still had too much power in that concentration of lightning. He would burn any Den Mushi or device, but that wasn't what he wanted. He had to reach a balance and reduce the visible lightning significantly, as anyone could see that there was something with a huge ball of lightning in their sight. He approached Enel, who was concentrating while he helped with his Moa Moa no Mi. It was only during the night that Enel finally managed to execute the ability correctly, according to Luffy's standards. After he had learned the skill, he just needed the right frequency. "This is good. Now let's meet with the others," Luffy said, and Enel nodded. It was almost time for them to initiate their plans. Luffy created his wings as his hair grew after a long time not being in the first phase of his beast form, which was a midpoint between his hybrid and common form. Both the lightning and a black angel burning with purple fire shot into the sky, flying towards Sabaody. They waited a little longer before Rayleigh finished coating the entire ship to start executing their plans. Chapter 288. Calm Before the Storm 3. Third-person POV. Sabaody Archipelago, first half of Grand Line. Luffy returned to the Sabaody Archipelago with Enel, then gathered the group to train a bit before starting operations, while the ship was finally getting ready. Many ships began arriving on the island, wanting to watch and cover the war from the best possible place to broadcast to all the communication and news companies in the world. "Let's go," said a man with a Den Mushi. "But boss, they are a pirate group worth billions," said another man with a recording Den Mushi. "Don't you understand? This is a unique opportunity to interview the billion-berry pirate," he said with a greedy tone. "What if they try to kill us?" "I don't want to die," the man complained. "Stop crying. Think about the fame and money we can get. We will sell this interview to Morgan's. We will be famous for this," the man said as they walked through the forest, still destroyed and devastated by fights a few days ago. "I still think it's a terrible idea," the cameraman murmured, but they continued through the destroyed area as they approached an isolated bar, with a large ship completely coated in bubbles for protection to enter the sea depths next to it. "It's the Black Pearl," the man said, taking the Den Mushi and snapping a photo of the ship. "Boss! It's him!" the cameraman suddenly called the boss, pointing to the front of the bar where a shirtless man was sitting in a chair, sunbathing alone in the morning. "Yes, it's him!" The man swallowed hard as he saw Monkey D. Luffy, who had returned to the island the day before and was there calmly with his hat over his face as if he was sleeping. "Let's go," he said nervously and hesitantly. His cameraman was nervous but nodded, following his boss as they approached the seemingly calm pirate. Excuse me, Lord Monkey D. Luffy." The man wrung his hands greedily as he called Luffy from a few meters away. Suddenly, Luffy murmured under his hat, while the men were startled by this. Luffy then moved his arm and removed his hat from his face, looking at the two men. "Who are you?" Luffy asked with a sleepy expression. "We are reporters, Lord Monkey D. Luffy." The man said nervously, "What do you want?" Luffy asked with a dangerous look, while they trembled with fear. "We want to interview you," the man said. "I'm not interested, as I'm heading to the New World," Luffy said grumpily, while the men were surprised by this, and the boss himself took his notebook and began writing about it. "You're leaving when there's a war about to happen?" The man was quite surprised by this. "Don't you see my fully coated ship?" I'm leaving soon. The war doesn't matter to me. Luffy continued speaking in a grumpy tone while the man kept marking everything in his notebook. He doesn't care about the war? The cameraman was quite surprised. Come on, take a picture of him, the boss requested, and the cameraman did exactly that, clicking a photo of Luffy looking at him grumpily. The flash appeared, and Luffy looked at them with a dazzling glare while the men trembled with fear. I told you to turn off the flash! Now we're gonna die! The boss shouted, Luffy, the coffee is ready. Suddenly a voice from the ship called out while Luffy diverted his attention to Reiju calling him. Well, time to eat something. Luffy spoke now in a common tone while he got up and walked to the ship. The two men were surprised to be ignored like that, but suddenly Luffy emitted a wave of Conqueror's haki, making the two faint on the ground. Luffy jumped onto the fully coated ship where Usopp had placed chains on the deck that no one could see from outside the ship. He headed to the upper deck cabin where the kitchen was and entered, finding his entire crew waiting for him. Luffy, why did you let those reporters approach? You didn't let anyone see us in the last few days and asked Yamato to do the same yesterday while you were away. Nojiko asked. I wanted to give false information. Tomorrow it will be in the newspaper that we are heading to the New World without caring about the war. This will confuse our enemies for a while, Luffy said, opening his usual smile without that usual grumpiness. What are we doing today? Are we leaving tomorrow, Captain? Hugo asked. I would like you to train a bit or get prepared, Luffy began while sitting in a chair and grabbing the food that Reiju made with Hachi's help. We won't have any easy moments once we leave this island, so I want you to be prepared. The enemies will be powerful and we won't just be facing the Navy. After all, the world government has painted us as Yonko-level threats or something like that, so they've sent many reinforcements to Marineford to assist the Navy. Luffy shared his thoughts with the crew. The world government wouldn't let the Navy face him alone, so they would have great enemies there. All right, I'll train, Hugo said, striking his right fist into his left palm with armament haki, showing that he wanted to do this. That's good. Let's continue the training after breakfast, Luffy said as everyone in the kitchen, where the entire crew was present at the moment, nodded. During the rest of the day, Luffy asked Yamato to take the reporters away from there with his bike, and Luffy continued training with his crew in that area while preventing anyone from getting close, as many people were trying to approach, from Marines, government agents, to reporters trying to get a scoop with photos or interviews. While his crew trained, a burst of sword clashes erupted in the air, as Luffy held his ace clashing against Rayleigh's sword. Rayleigh had already finished his work and took this time to spar with Luffy. The swords clashed at high speed in the air. It wasn't a very violent fight, but to any normal person, it seemed like they were trying to kill each other. What is this? How did you put a devil fruit in that sword? Rayleigh couldn't help but ask, surprised, while watching the lightning being emitted by Ace around it. I threatened the user of the Yami Yami no Mi. The powers of darkness are quite useful, Luffy commented while Rayleigh, despite knowing nothing about that fruit, nodded. Their fight continued as they destroyed the area and explosions occurred in the outlaw area. They're fighting again, a citizen said from a distance, looking towards the forest. Who? A man in a suit with a Den Den Mushi commented. You just arrived today. Those explosions are made by the Straw Hats. They've isolated themselves on that side of the forest. No one on the islands can fight against them. Even the Navy fled after he took down an admiral, or so they say, the citizen explained. The Straw Hats. This will make for a lot of photos. The reporter was quite excited. Doubtful. They always throw everyone who tried to get close, knocked out of the area. No one can get near, the man warned. Tsk. Kid growled from a distance alongside his second-in-command. He decided to stay on the island, and seeing the explosions was humiliating for him. Luffy continued fighting with Rayleigh for the rest of the day, fighting with swords for at least 4 hours straight, before finally stopping to gather his crew for the final banquet on Sabaody Island. It was a good fight, although at my age it's getting harder and harder to have long battles, Rayleigh commented. It was great training. Come on, Rayleigh, let's have a drink. Luffy said with a smile as they entered Shaki's bar, while she placed 2 glasses with a bottle on the table as if she already knew what was going to happen. "So, have you thought about what I said?" Luffy asked. Rayleigh didn't respond immediately and took his glass after filling it, looking at Luffy as he drank. "Do you think I will be useful? You all learned hockey on your own with this manual you mentioned," he said. "It's not the same as having a teacher. Even I have some deficiencies, and it will still take time for me to become an expert to perfect my hockey," Luffy said. "Besides, wouldn't it be safer for you to stay here? How about moving and enjoying your retirement in a better way?" "All right," Rayleigh finally nodded. "I'll train her, but I want to meet her first," Rayleigh said. "Okay, we'll come back after the war here. After all, I need to get her." Luffy pointed to a woman crossing her arms at the entrance of the bar where Bonnie stood. "Tsk," she clicked her tongue while Luffy was drinking his beverage. He spent some time talking with Rayleigh before leaving, and as it was getting dark, he spoke to Bonnie. "I'm leaving tomorrow, so you'd better think carefully before I come back here, kid," he said to her outside the bar. Bonnie didn't respond, just looking at him. She seemed like she wanted to say something but held back. "Don't call me a kid." That was the only thing she shouted before turning her back to Luffy and leaving. The crew meeting later resulted in another banquet while they enjoyed their last moments before starting the real battle. The next day, Luffy left with his group hidden from everyone, while a newspaper came out that day with the news that he was heading to the New World, along with a photo of him with the coated ship. "Are we ready?" Luffy commented, looking at the ship after placing it on the western edge of the island. As it started to inflate with the coating filling with air, the crew was inside the area. "Good luck, Mugiwara boy," Shaki shouted while waving to them. Rayleigh kept a smile, watching them. "Will do." Luffy smiled and looked at the huge shadow above the ship. It was Enel's ship, which he was controlling with the power of his fruit. Hugo and Chochu were with Enel. "Are you ready? The mission is quite simple. I want you to capture a group of them without the world government knowing. There's a bunch of them leaving that golden part of the treasure," Luffy commented. "A simple task," Enel said with disdain. "It'll be great to beat up a few more of them," Hugo commented with a smile. "Wolf, wolf," Shushu barked. "All right, don't take too long. We won't act until you are in Impel Down," Luffy commented, and both nodded as the ship created by Enel began to fly away, ascending one side of the Red Mountain without attracting the attention of Marie Gioes. "Great, now let's depart." Luffy returned to his crew while Hachi waved at the helm. "Goodbye, everyone. I'll be waiting for you," Kami commented from Bonnie's back on the shore, with her starfish also waving. The ship began to enter the water after that, finally submerging completely, descending between the roots of the trees that formed the Sabaody trees. "Let's go, everyone." Luffy smiled as he looked at the underwater scenery starting to unfold in front of him. Chapter 289, Storm is Coming 1, Third-Person POV, Sabaody Archipelago, First Half of Grand Line. The ship began to sink as the entire marine ecosystem filled all sides, with the Black Pearl descending further every moment. "This is incredible!" Chopper shouted excitedly. "So these are the roots of the Sabaody trees," Robin said in admiration. "So my home is down here?" Shirahoshi murmured, looking at the scene before her. "Yes, Princess," Hachi muttered, familiar with the region. While everyone marveled, Nami noticed Luffy silently appreciating the marine ecosystem as well. "Luffy, do you know if they will succeed before they find us?" Nami asked. "Yes, the information I got was from Kuma. He has all the government communications, and he provided some very valuable intel," Luffy commented. "I hope this will be necessary. We'll have to deal with an even more enraged government," she complained, but Luffy shrugged. "Well, our arrival at the war should be impactful, so it will be necessary," Luffy smiled. The ship continued descending after that, reaching 2,000 meters below the surface. The crew kept admiring the fish and everything they encountered in that place. "What a funny fish!" Yamato laughed at the shapes of the underwater creatures. "Shirahoshi," Luffy called the mermaid who was looking off the side of the deck. "Yes, Luffy-sama." She looked at him. "I want you to summon the Sea Kings. It's time for them to pull us to Impel Down," Luffy said, watching Nami manage the direction. All right, I'll try, Shirahoshi said with some determination, then flew to the top of the deck. Sea King-sama, I need your help to carry our ship, she shouted with all her might, her hands cupped around her mouth to create an echo. The sea fell silent as the entire crew waited, trying to detect any change in the darkness ahead, but no response seemed to come. Our ruler is calling us. Suddenly, a voice emerged from the depths of the ocean. The crew seemed oblivious to it, as if they hadn't heard it except for two, Shirahoshi, who was surprised, and Luffy, whose eyes widened. Is this the voice of all things? Luffy was quite surprised by this. He had this dormant ability within him but had never managed to control it, even when he used it on that poneglyph in East Blue. Are you all right, husband? Alvida asked, noticing Luffy's strange behavior, although there was no visible change in the sea. I am. It's just... Luffy gave up trying to explain and looked at Shirahoshi with a confused yet astonished expression. Did you hear that, Shira? He asked, while the crew remained puzzled by his words, having heard nothing. Yes, they responded. I am the ruler. Shirahoshi was surprised by this. Yes, you are Poseidon. Of course you rule all the seas, Luffy said with a smile to the girl, who nodded. He turned his attention back to the crew, still not understanding what was happening. The Sea Kings are coming. Let's put the chains out, Luffy instructed. Right. Usopp began to get the chains on the deck with Hachi, Chopper in his muscular form, and even Yamato, throwing them outside the coating. A moment later, shadows began approaching the ship, with eyes opening as large as 50 times the size of the Black Pearl. We're going to die! Nami and Vivi hugged each other in fear as Usopp and Chopper ran scared across the deck. The others frowned as more and more creatures of the same size appeared. Hey, Luffy, I hope this plan of yours doesn't kill us, Lami immediately complained. Shira, explain to them. Luffy turned his attention back to the mermaid. Yes, Luffy-sama, she said, focusing on the immense Sea Kings. She didn't feel fear, but rather a certain familiarity, a sense of belonging. Hello, Sea King-sama! We need you to push our ship there, she pointed while holding the eternal pose to impel down. The monster remained silent for a moment, then opened its mouth as several bubbles of air emerged. Yes, it said, forcing Luffy and Shirahoshi to cover their ears from the nearby sound. Don't shout! Luffy exclaimed with his Moa Moa no Mi amplifying the sound. Don't shout! His crew shouted back at him with grimaces, as they all had to cover their ears from Luffy's yell. Luffy, who are you talking to? Nojiko asked, confused, while it seemed that only Shirahoshi and Luffy could hear something none of them could. That guy is talking, but only Shira and I can hear him, Luffy commented. Only you two can hear? Robin approached Luffy, curious. It's hard to explain, but the good thing is he agreed to take us to Impel Down, so don't worry about them eating us, Luffy said to calm the more frightened members. Can he hear us? The Sea Kings were surprised by this. This happened almost 20 years ago. Another spoke calmly. In any case, let's obey our ruler, the Sea King said, and they all began to approach the ship, biting the tiny chains with their immense mouths that could fit hundreds of such ships. As soon as they grabbed the chains, without saying much, they started swimming in the direction Shirahoshi requested. Now it won't take long, Luffy said with satisfaction, as the crew looked on in admiration, while the Black Pearl was surrounded by immense creatures and began to disappear into the darkness of the sea. Meanwhile, kilometers above the sea, the golden ship began to round the red line at a much higher altitude, passing it unnoticed behind the clouds. Woof! Choo-Choo was playing on the deck, trying to bite the clouds. The mutt is just wasting time, Enel mocked, sitting in his chair in the middle of the deck. Grrr! Choo-Choo growled at Enel while Hugo crossed his arms, looking down. Somewhere over there is married Jaois, he said, trying to locate the sacred city, but the view was limited during the day with all those clouds. We could pass by and destroy the city where the false gods reside, Enel suddenly suggested. As much as I'd love to do that and want to find that Tenryubito who killed my family, it's not the time yet. Hugo spoke, though with a tone of frustration. Sk, you overestimate the mortals, Enel said arrogantly, and you underestimate them. Do you think we have any chance of facing the power of that city? Don't forget that in that place, they control the entire world. Hugo spoke as if Enel were an idiot. Enel didn't respond. Anyway, let's catch some fish. Soon, we'll meet those people before finding the captain and the others, Hugo commented. The ship continued, with Enel still seated, Shushu trying to bite the clouds, and Hugo continuing to look off the side of the deck, until they finally passed the red line and began to descend, entering the most dangerous sea in the world. The captain gave us this eternal pose, so head in this direction, Hugo said, tossing the compass ball with the direction, while Enel caught it easily and followed the indicated path. They continued at a high altitude, with no one below them able to guess a ship was sailing among the clouds. It was at night that they spotted a large glow coming from the sea in that direction. This was the treasure ship, the user of the gold fruit. We shouldn't get too close. The captain said if he senses our ship, it could bring us trouble, Hugo warned. Enel didn't respond as he stopped the ship some distance in the air. What do we do now? He asked. We'll wait. According to Luffy, a ship with those bastards will be leaving the place, escorted directly to Mary Geoa's, Hugo said, knowing from their captain that they would be returning to the sacred city to witness the war. The ship continued floating for the rest of the night as they rested. It was in the morning that a group of ships left that place, a ship surrounded by 6 marine and world government ships. Hugo stood up, looking at them with interest. They are our targets, then. Enel sensed with his observation haki. Yes. Hugo looked at the decorated ship, reminiscent of the one they encountered at the end of East Blue, symbolizing wealth and power, as that group liked to flaunt their status. We will follow them from afar and attack as soon as they are in the middle of the ocean, Hugo said as Chushu woke up, ready to fight as well. Enel's ship continued following them, while all the ships were heading to Mary Geoa's, unaware that they were being watched. I will act. It's time for them to know the power of a true god, Enel said as Hugo and Chushu rolled their eyes. Enel then shot down from his ship, running in the air as a lightning bolt. What is that? A thunderbolt? The government members around the main ship were surprised, hearing thunder descending from the sky, while a member in white with a mask on the main ship frowned. He was from CP0, in charge of that ship's security. Call for reinforcements. We are under attack, he immediately shouted when he sensed the power of that lightning bolt and who was in it. Enel of the Straw Hat Pirates, known for killing and beating Tenryubitos. However, from the lightning, an almost invisible static explosion occurred. While the agents grabbed the Denden Mushi, they started to fall limply. The Denden Mushi are not working, the man shouted as everyone grew scared. What is happening? An arrogant voice demanded from the deck, asking what was going on in his astronaut-like suit. This is bad. The CP0 agent saw the situation getting worse. As Enel descended with lightning, Hugo and Chushu followed behind, though they couldn't match the speed of the Logia user. The battle had just begun in that area with the static field. While the world was preparing to watch the battle, Marineford was in full swing preparing for the fight. How is he? Sengoku asked an officer. He is still in a bad mood, but he is adapting, he replied. I had a conversation with him, so he will help in this war with a chance for revenge, Sengoku said. How are the others? He continued to question. Dracul Mayhawk is coming. Bartholomew Kuma is finishing his surgery with Vegapunk. Hancock is being escorted by Momonga here. Jinbei is being sent to Impel Down. Those already here are Don Quixote do Flamingo, Gecko Moria, and Marshal D. Teach. The officer informed the status of each of the Shichibukai. I see. Unfortunately, we had some issues with Jinbei since he refused to participate in this war, so we sent him to Impel Down. Sengoku murmured he had been sending many people to Impel Down lately. You may go. He dismissed the officers as they left the room, his gaze returning to the port, where dozens of ships were approaching every moment, and others were leaving Marineford carrying the families of the Marines. He looked for a while when the Denden Mushi began to ring at that moment. It was none other than the 5 elders. Let's see what reinforcements you will give us for this war. Sengoku commented as he approached. It was time to have this kind of conversation with the Gorosei. Chapter 290, Storm is Coming, 02 Third-Person POV, Marineford, first half of Grand Line. Sengoku. The voice of one of the elders was immediately heard as he opened the Denden Mushi. Elders, Sengoku murmured. How are things going? We want reports, they asked impatiently. We are organizing the entire base. Our estimate is that we will have at least 100,000 elite Marine soldiers coming from all parts of the world. We will have the majority of the Shichibukai and the entire Marine force along with a batch of pacifistas that you have provided us, Sengoku said. Great. How are you handling the New World? They asked. We have stationed large forces in that sea. We know how agitated they will be and how the other Yonko will be making moves. We have also left 20 ships at the entrance of the Red Line, he said. Yes, it seems that Shanks and Kaido are moving. Big Mom is also moving, sending some of her ships, the elders said. Yes, we have many vice-admirals in the New World to control the situation, like Virgo, Jian, and others, Sengoku reported. Great, we will send Kong and a batch of a special force. We cannot send more because that pirate launched an attack on Mary Geoise, they said. Yes, a newspaper came out yesterday that he went to the New World and that he really left Subodi, Sengoku said, looking out the window. That's just a ruse. That boy is doing this to try to confuse us, but he won't let his brother die, not after sending a meteor at us, threatening to do it again if we attack any island of his crew, they reasoned. Yes, we will wait for him anyway. I expect your reinforcements, Sengoku said. In any case, we know that he is stronger than the admirals, so use everything you can to destroy him. And even if you can't, after all, he may very well escape the battlefield with his ability to move at the last moment. I want you to eliminate at all costs 2 members of his group, Usopp and Beppo. One of them has Shiki's ability. The elders issued this order as important as eliminating Whitebeard and Ace. Yes, Sengoku agreed. He already had photos of the 2 on his desk as a priority in this war. Great. We will speak until the war, the elders said while Sengoku sighed and returned once again to the window, as this was his only therapy amidst so much pressure on his shoulders. The port of Marineford was bustling with activity. Hundreds of Marine soldiers moved in sync throughout the day, preparing for the imminent battle. Powerful warships, with their reinforced hulls and iconic white sails, began docking at the port. The atmosphere was charged with tension and determination among all the soldiers disembarking. One specific ship arriving at that moment was a batch that had been training for the past few months on one of the Marine Training Program islands. On its prow as it docked at Marineford, Smoker stood there, looking intently at the HQ. It seems we have finally arrived. He returned to the deck as the sailors on board lined up in perfect formation. Commodore Smoker! They saluted, as Smoker had gained a new rank, moving from captain to commodore, learning the 6 styles in hockey. By his side, Tashigi approached and stood next to him, with a serious face, while she kept a high-grade sword at her waist. Both had undergone intense training and were ready to contribute with their new strength in this war. I heard rumors that Monkey D. Luffy will appear, Tashigi commented, despite seeing newspapers saying he left for the New World yesterday. But there were still rumors. Even though almost no one knew that Luffy was Ace's childhood brother, rumors began to circulate as the command prepared to deal with the Straw Hat Pirates in this war as well. In Alabasta, they were very close. I feel he will come, Smoker said. He had always suffered defeats from Luffy and his crew since the East Blue, hoping to handle it better, although with Luffy being stronger than an admiral, he didn't have much confidence that he could defeat them, although he would contribute to the Marines' victory both against Whitebeard and the Straw Hats. Everyone, prepare to disembark, Smoker ordered in his hoarse voice after speaking with Tashigi. The sailors nodded in unison, their expressions resolute, as they adjusted their equipment and prepared to disembark. The sound of boots hitting the deck echoed through the air, mixed with the sound of waves breaking against the hull and the walls of the HQ. Right behind, another immense ship was approaching. Vice Admiral Momonga was on the prow, observing with keen eyes. Inside the cabin, Boa Hancock was alone, isolating herself from everyone, resting while gently stroking her belly. "Let's disembark!" Momonga gave the order as the sailors, no longer petrified, began to position the ship behind the one Smoker had docked. "Miss Hancock, we've arrived!" A sailor knocked on Hancock's door, hearts in his eyes. "Tsk!" Hancock appeared, and the man flew after being kicked with the door. Hancock walked out without speaking to anyone else as she headed toward Marineford. I want to know where my room is. She stopped to speak with Momonga as he nodded. I'll ask someone to take you, she said, ignoring his arrogant and hostile tone. His only job was to bring this woman here, and he succeeded after she agreed to the Marine and government's request. She then followed to the place where she would stay until the war. As more ships docked, the soldiers continued to disembark. They all had faces of fear and determination. Some whispered prayers, others sharpened their swords, but all shared the same mission, to defend Marineford at all costs. Amid the organized chaos atop the main building, the Marine Admirals Aokiji, Akainu, and Kizaru observed from above, despite the latter still using band-aids from his last fight with Luffy. The time has come. The Marines will not fail. Akainu spoke with a determined tone. Well, this fight will be difficult, Aokiji commented, looking at the Marines, thinking about how many of them would die in this war. Kizaru remained silent. He didn't even have the humor to make his usual comments. No matter what we do, even if we need to sacrifice everyone here, we will destroy those two entire groups, Akainu growled. There will be no justice if it's destroyed along with it, Kuzan said to his colleague. You are weak, Kuzan, Akainu growled at him. Destroying that group will send a message to the whole world that this era will end. Akainu did not sympathize with Sengoku's ideas, which were similar to Kuzan's, but he couldn't deny that the current fleet admiral's idea of destroying this era by killing the world's strongest pirate was quite intelligent, and he strongly agreed with it. I hope you are right, Kuzan said, ignoring the offense Akainu gave him. Kizaru said nothing during this time. Of course, this battle will define the future of the world. Akainu spoke with his cigar burning. Back at the port, the final preparations were being made. Barricades were erected, cannons positioned, and Dendenmushi communications adjusted to ensure that no orders would be lost in the heat of the battle to come in the next few days. Maintenance teams were inspecting all the base's cannons. The base had the shape of a crescent moon, with cabins, with cannons that could have the power of about 3 buster calls, intended to destroy any threat that approached the location, while new Marines learned to handle the fire machines. The preparation for war continued throughout the rest of the day, as all the ships with civilians finally left the island. Their families stayed in the square to fight, hoping to reunite with them later, but deep down, they knew there was a great chance they would not survive the conflict. Everything seemed fine until nightfall, when news first reached Mary Giois. What do you mean a ship with 10 Ryubitos disappeared? The elders exclaimed when they heard the news coming directly from the leader of the Holy Knights, kneeling before them. We lost communication with the ships yesterday. There was a large escort bringing them from Gran Tesoro, 5 ships with Cypherpole agents and a CP0 agent to reinforce their security. They disappeared, and we investigated for the rest of the day. They really left Gran Tesoro, and it seems they were ambushed in the middle of the sea by someone who managed to cut all the ship's communications. And worse, the Viver cards of the Tenryubitos are not moving, he explained, while all the elders looked at each other, trying to understand the situation. Even the Viver cards can't find them. The elders seemed alarmed by this. Who would do this, Whitebeard or Monkey D. Luffy? One of them growled. Whitebeard has never messed with the Tenryubito. I don't believe it's him, another one said. So he really went to the New World, another commented. Don't be hasty. They have the user of the Fuwa no Mi. Crossing the red line is easy, another reasoned. Then why the coding? What's happening? What is that bastard planning? They were getting more and more confused by Luffy's actions, which didn't seem to make much sense. Search the entire beginning of the New World. Understood. They gave the order to the Holy Knight, who quickly nodded and disappeared to organize the search party. There were 7 Tenryubito on those ships. They had issued an order after the attack in Sabodi to send them immediately to Mary Giois. However, they didn't expect that they would actually be attacked like this. The worst part is that they don't even know who really did it or where they are. They are only using the Viver cards to see if they are alive. In the New World, a group of marine ships was near the red line, staying still in place, waiting for anyone who approached. Do you think he will show up? said a Marine to his colleague. All indications say yes, he replied. Damn, do we stand a chance? He swallowed hard. It doesn't matter. We'll do our part and sacrifice for the Marines, he said with determination as he looked at the New World Sea, which was experiencing a storm at that moment. A lightning bolt hit the sea, and in the darkness of the night, an enormous ship appeared with the flash, displaying the most dangerous flag in the world. The Marine, who until that moment was giving a speech about sacrifice, seemed to lose all composure as he had a terrified face, sweating and pointing in that direction while trembling. "It's the Moby Dick!" he growled, alerting the whole ship, while the others were already becoming aware of the situation. Whitebeard was getting rained on at that moment, looking ahead on his deck. "Pops, what will we do with the Marines?" one of the division commanders asked, his voice slightly muffled by the rain and thunder. "Isn't it obvious? Gurararararara! The Marines came to greet us here, so let's greet them back," he announced, and before anyone could react, Newgate jumped from the deck, landing on the prow of his ship. "Let's see how you handle this," he said with a smile, as all the Marines felt a bad premonition and didn't even have time to communicate their situation to their superiors, since it was too late. Whitebeard tilted his arm back with his fist clenched and launched it forward. Hitting the space and cracking it with the sound of breaking glass, the power of the Gura Gura no Mi, which could destroy the world, was finally unleashed against his enemies at that moment. Chapter 291, Storm is Coming 03, third-person POV Marineford, first half of Grand Line. "What are you saying? That 20 Navy ships have lost contact with this thing?" Sengoku shouted angrily into the Den Den Mushi. "Yes, all the ships just disappeared." The G1 officer spoke from the other side of the line. "Tsk." Sengoku gritted his teeth before hanging up the Den Den Mushi. "It seems Whitebeard has started to act. I don't think it was Luffy doing this." Garp's voice was heard from the side as Sengoku sighed. "We've lost many men and warships even before the war has started," Sengoku murmured as he stood up. "First, the disappearance of the Tenryu Bito. An investigation found wreckage at sea. All the ships were blown up without a chance to attack." Sengoku reported the autopsy he received from the Gorosei. "It seems things are getting bad for the Marines." Garp commented. He no longer had his usual humor, his face somber with everything that was happening. "Yes, but this was always a risk we would run as soon as the war was proclaimed with Ace's capture and execution." Sengoku commented as he walked past Garp, who remained silent and stopped at his side. "And you, Garp, will you betray this organization when the time comes?" Sengoku asked directly, meeting the eyes of his old companion. "I will fight for justice, and even if that moment comes, I will accept it." Garp spoke with some determination he found within himself. Sengoku accepted his words and nodded. "Now, I will go to a meeting with the Shichibukai," he said, leaving the room. Sengoku continued walking through the corridors of Marineford while the place was bustling with people running in all directions as they prepared for battle, many of them stopping to salute the fleet admiral. He headed to a specific room. Suru was at its entrance. "You finally arrived," she commented. "I had some issues reported from G1. We'll talk about it later. Now let's see our guests," he said, and she nodded, with some Marines opening the door as they entered the place, which had a huge table. There were 6 people there, of different sizes, some giants, others small, talking to each other while mocking one another. These were the 6 Shichibukai who came to fight in Marineford. "Kishishi, Doflamingo, look at you." Moria mocked Doflamingo, who was still covered in bandages. "Do you want to die, Moria?" Doflamingo growled. Hancock sat in silence, ignoring everyone. Kuma also remained silent. "Zia, ha ha ha! I heard you provoked this, calling them all to attack you at once." Teach couldn't help but mock, seeing Doflamingo's state covered in many bandages. "Say one more thing and I will kill you." Doflamingo growled at Teach. "Kishishishi." Moria began to laugh. Sorry. Teach raised his hands as if he was apologizing, but still showed a toothless smile. "Moria, you got beaten by Monkey D." "Luffy, I don't know why you're laughing so much at Doflamingo," Mihawk commented. "Tsk, I almost won," Moria commented. Kuma remained silent. "These bastards, I will kill them as soon as I can for speaking about my husband." Hancock had her eyes closed while thinking about Luffy like the love-struck girl she was. I see you are getting along, Sengoku approached at that moment with Tsuru. Everyone fell silent with Sengoku's presence. Well, let's begin, he said as the meeting started. Sengoku began to go over all the points they expected from this group, while everyone who had already fought the Straw Hats had different thoughts. Zia-ha-ha! Will he really show up? This will be very interesting. Zia! Teach began to laugh and speak loudly, but also knew that Luffy's presence could destroy his plans, so he had some doubts in his heart. Tsk! Doflamingo gritted his teeth. Mugiwara. Moria said angrily as he pronounced that name. Let's see how much you have grown, Roronoa Zoro, Mihawk commented. Kuma had undergone his surgery. He no longer had an opinion on the matter. Hancock remained silent, but in her mind she was boiling. Luffy, when you arrive, we will fight all our enemies as a couple, she screamed. The meeting continued meanwhile, beneath the waters known as the Tarai Current. Several Sea Kings continued to escort the Black Pearl, heading to Impel Down. In the air, a ship made of gold continued following the Vivicard, while Enel steered. How are the false gods? Enel asked. Imprisoned and beaten, they're screaming that we're going to die in the worst possible ways. But I started beating them, Hugo commented. Wolf, wolf, Shushu barked. And Shushu bit some of them too, Hugo added. That was quite easy. Enel couldn't help but speak arrogantly. We eliminated everyone involved, even that CP0 agent didn't stand a chance. Hugo commented and looked curiously at the ex-god of Skypiea. Your ability also restricts a person's vital field, preventing the Vivicard from finding them. It truly is a terrifying ability, he concluded. There is nothing that a god like me cannot do, he said. Chushu mocked. Want to die, Mutt? Enel asked while sparking with electricity, Chushu doing the same. Hugo just rolled his eyes at their argument, which was quite routine. In Sabaody, Bartolomeo finally docked at Sabaody but was crying over Luffy's departure, which was announced in the newspaper, believing he had gone to the New World. Luffy-senpai, he cried while his entire crew did the same. Who are those weirdos? Beg looked from a distance, seeing the crew in tears, and mocked. Just another random pirate, Basil said, shrugging as he continued with his group to another place. Meanwhile, in Shaki's bar, Rayleigh was drinking a bottle of wine. So it will start in a few days, he commented. How do you think the war will end? Shaki asked, putting a hand on her chin. I don't know, but it will definitely change the world. Rayleigh commented thoughtfully. I hope it ends well for Mugiwara boy, she said, looking around her bar. He scared away all my customers. No one has come since the fight after hitting the Tenryubito, she complained a bit. You still have some customers. Rayleigh smiled as there were still 2 more people in the bar. They'll be cheering for Mugiwara boy, Shaki commented with a smile, as Kami was drinking juice and Bonnie eating pizza. That's right, Kami shouted with her starfish on her shoulder. Don't forget to pay the bill later. 100 million for the juice, Shaki warned. What? 100 million? Kami screamed with a shocked expression. 100 million? That's robbery. Bonnie also shouted. Another day passed, and the world was increasingly focused on Marineford. The world government had dispatched its group to assist Marineford, flying in the sky towards the Navy HQ. Meanwhile, Sengoku was in his office, tapping his finger on the table. He looked directly at the Den Den Mushi. Everything was ready as they finalized everything for the battle to begin. The time has come, he said finally, as he moved his hand to the communicator and dialed a number. Hello, the director is busy in the bathroom at the moment. A female voice came from the other side. Tell Magellan to start moving the prisoner to Marineford, Sengoku said, as the ships were already passing through the Gate of Justice heading towards the prison. Understood, Fleet Admiral. The woman on the other side spoke. The chief jailer, Domino, saw that Sengoku had hung up the Den Den Mushi and went to the bathroom door, which didn't have a pleasant smell. Director Magellan, an order came from HQ. We have to escort Portgas D. Ace, she shouted. Understood. Wait another 5 minutes. 20 minutes, he shouted as a farting sound was heard. The woman remained silent as she stepped back and waited for the director to come out. The Navy ship continued sailing with Kuzan and Akainu escorting it. Is something wrong, Kuzan? Akainu noticed Kuzan's strange behavior, looking at the sea as if trying to see something within it. "I have a strange feeling," he murmured, but his haki couldn't identify anything there. "Let's just focus on the mission," Akainu advised, while the ship continued heading to Impel Down, and Kuzan stopped looking at the sea and focused on the escort mission. Ace was not having an easy time. Imprisoned alongside people he knew very well, while he remained silent with someone beside him still trying to break free. Then there were sounds of footsteps on that 6th floor, a floor not known to most people for housing the world's worst criminals. The director of Impel Down himself appeared with an escort, and immediately all the cells started mocking Magellan as he passed by, breaking the silence that had been there. While some people remained silent, being the most dangerous of all, an ex-Shichibukai watched the scene unfolding in front of him in silence. Even members of Roger's former crew watched with a calculating look. An ex-director of this prison clicked his tongue seeing the scene. Many other prisoners, as dangerous as the last, watched in silence while their colleagues shouted at the director. "Shut up!" Magellan said as his body transformed into poison, making everyone fall silent the next moment. After all, Magellan could kill them there with them chained. Magellan continued walking until he reached the cell with 3 people, with one trying everything to escape. "Portgas D. Ace, you will be escorted to Marineford," Magellan said as his agents began to open the cell and remove the chains that connected Ace to the cell wall, with Ace remaining silent the entire time. They simply took him, and Ace didn't seem to show any resistance as he continued with them.
AC!
A voice came from behind him, but he ignored it as he walked out. It didn't take long for him to enter the elevator and return to the surface, as Ace was escorted to the Navy ship with 2 admirals and 10 warships around to escort them with vice admirals. "Portgas D. Ace, your death will be for the good of everyone in this world." Akainu greeted him calmly, while Kuzan remained silent. Ace did not respond and went to the ship's prison, as the Navy ships finally started departing, disappearing on the horizon as they headed for HQ. "Finally they left," a Marine commented, sighing in relief as he watched the ships disappear on the horizon. "Yes, at least the war won't come to us," another colleague commented. Everyone in Impel Down was fearing a possible war between them and Whitebeard attacking the prison to rescue his son. However, what they didn't expect was that the clouds of war wouldn't spare them either. Because underwater, immense shadows began to appear, but without anyone noticing them. "We have arrived." The voices of the Sea Kings were heard by Luffy and Shirahoshi. "Thank you very much, Sea King-sama," the mermaid said as everyone realized they had arrived. "Prepare everyone. We will start our plan as soon as NL begins. Give me the Den Den Mushi," Luffy said to everyone while grabbing the Den Den Mushi that Robin kept on her table next to the chair where she was reading a book. After some time in the space above Impel Down, Enel had arrived along with the submerged ship. "The paper points downward. We have finally arrived," he said as his Den Den Mushi began to ring. The operation to invade the prison had finally begun. At Marineford, Teach was with his companions. "So they are escorting the commander here. Zia-ha-ha!" Teach laughed as one of his crew members intercepted the Navy's channel while hiding. "What do we do now, Captain?" Burgess asked with a smile. "We will start our plan, Zia-ha-ha-ha! Let's go to Impel Down," he said as everyone nodded. Chapter 292, Impel Down, 01, Third-Person POV, Impel Down, first half of Grand Line. As soon as the Sea Kings moved away from the front of the ship, the prison appeared to the Straw Hat Pirates on the Black Pearl, being an immense structure that reached down to the bottom of the sea. "Is this the biggest prison in the world?" Chopper asked. "Yes, the worst criminals are held there," Usopp commented. "Will I find the others there?" Hachi couldn't help but ask, since his companions were brought here after their defeat by Nami in the East Blue. "How are we going to invade it, Luffy?" Kuina approached Luffy. "Through the entrance, of course. Breaking any structure from the bottom of the sea would cause the pressure to fill with water. Even Shirahoshi couldn't control that, and eventually, many people would die." Luffy spoke while holding the ringing Den Den Mushi in his hand. "How many floors does this place have?" Vivi asked. "Impel Down is known to have 5 levels," Nojiko replied. "That's not accurate information. Luffy interrupted them. There's a secret floor where prisoners with bounties over 100 million are kept. It's at the lowest level, known as the 6th level. Luffy clarified while Nojiko nodded with this new information. Are we going to invade that floor, Luffy? Nami asked, and Luffy nodded. Sounds fun, Yamato said with a smile. Hello. The Den Mushi was finally answered as Enel's voice came from the other side. Are you ready? Luffy asked. I'll begin. Enel said as he started to descend his golden ship. Hachi, prepare to take the ship to the surface, Luffy ordered, and Hachi went to the helm. Meanwhile, in front of the prison, while all the warships seemed relaxed, a cloud appeared above them. What is that? A sailor didn't understand the shadow obscuring the sun. That's a ship, someone shouted, identifying it. An enemy attack, another shouted. Quick, inform them that an unidentified ship is approaching the prison from the air. They yelled immediately. The sailors grabbed the Den Mushi and began dialing immediately to HQ, but then a lightning explosion emerged from the ship and struck all the warships and the prison's surface, expanding to the bottom of the sea. What's happening? The sailor shouted as he saw his Den Mushi wither, the snail looking tired as it stuck its tongue out and twisted its antennas with its eyes. We've lost communication, another shouted. Damn it, prepare for battle, inform the director immediately. Others shouted while someone ran towards the prison entrance. Something is coming from the water. Another pointed to the side of the deck as they aimed weapons and cannons at the ship in the sky. The shadow began to expand until finally, an enormous ship emerged from the sea, exploding with water and foam everywhere. That's... A sailor pointed to the ship that had just emerged from the water while it was coated. It's him. He trembled with his finger pointing. It's the Black Pearl. All the sailors were scared at that moment, while the coating exploded, revealing Luffy at the bow of the ship with an excited look towards the front of the prison. It's the Straw Hats. What are they doing here? The crowd exclaimed, while Enel's ship approached the Black Pearl and stayed by its side. Let's begin, Luffy announced as he jumped from the ship to the port in front of him, impelled down. The sailors quickly pointed their weapons at Luffy and started shooting at him in the air, as if that would work. He spoke disdainfully while closing his fist in purple flames and launching it at the ship, creating a burst of flames that consumed the ship, vaporizing all the bullets flying towards him. The ship exploded while the other ships were frightened by this power. He landed on the port, and the other ship nearby exploded as a huge lightning bolt struck it. What are you doing here? Ace has already been taken to Marineford. Do you think you can get away with attacking Impel Down? The sailors shouted at him. Don't worry, we have a day before the execution at Marineford. For now, we'll invade this prison. That has always been our goal. Luffy spoke with a smile as he released his haki, spreading throughout the port area. All the sailors and some officers commanding these men fell unconscious to the ground, while the ship Luffy exploded was still on fire, and the one Enel destroyed was in ruins in the sea. The crew began to disembark from the ship, approaching the captain amidst the chaos. Luffy looked at them. Yamato, Zoro, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Usopp, Chopper, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Hachi, and Baby 5, all looking at him with determination. He nodded and began to shrink the ships. Chochu, Enel, and Hugo landed shortly afterward. Let's go, Luffy said as he started walking towards the enormous prison door that had been closed as soon as some sailors passed through to inform the director about the attack. The group continued walking calmly while the 19 people passed by all the fallen bodies until Luffy stopped in front of the door. The sailor was running through the initial corridors. Attack! We're under attack! He shouted as he passed by the prison guards. Attack! Could it be the Whitebeard pirates? They exclaimed, watching the sailor continue running until he found the director's office. Suddenly, 2 enormous explosions erupted outside, and everyone on the first floor could hear them. Even the prisoners on level 1 wondered what was happening. What is that? Director Magellan was in the bathroom again when he heard the explosions, while his secretary looked confused outside. Something is happening, she murmured, a bit scared by the enormous booms caused by Luffy and Enel. Enemy attack! The prison is under attack! A man outside the bathroom shouted. Damn it, what's this while I'm taking a dump? Magellan complained, having no choice but to leave the bathroom while holding himself. The marine soldier began to explain. A ship came from the sky and another from the water. It's the Straw Hats. They're attacking the entrance of Impel Down. He shouted, alarmed, while Magellan frowned at this. We must inform HQ immediately. Magellan said, frustrated, knowing this pirate group was too dangerous, even for him. We've lost all communications. No Den Den Mushi is working. The marine soldier cried. What, Chief Jailer Domino, let me see your Den Den Mushi. He demanded immediately, and the woman handed over the snail, which had its tongue out and looked tired and fainted. This. Even the woman was quite surprised by this. This is bad. We need to alert the other levels about this. If the Den Den Mushis aren't working, sound the alarms. Magellan ordered, and the woman nodded before running out of the room. We'll try to stop them at the entrance, the director said with some determination. Even though he was at a disadvantage, he would fight the group with everything he had. As they were about to go, a third enormous explosion occurred, so strong that it shook the entire surface of Impel Down, causing the area to tremble. This, the marine soldier immediately cried. They've entered, let's go, they said, heading to the entrance. Luffy had punched with such force that the gate flew off. It might have been built with sea stone, but his powerful haki made knocking it down not too difficult. Finally, entering Impel Down, Luffy said with a small smile as he began to enter the place. An alarm began to sound at that moment, with the chief jailer arriving at the security room and instructing the guards to activate it to alert everyone in the prison. What's happening? Buggy on the first floor, also known as Level 1, Crimson Hell, looked surprised while in his cell, hearing the alarm blaring throughout the place. What is that? On Level 2, Beast Hell, the prisoners were all surprised by this too, while all the beasts guarding the place also looked confused. HM? On Level 3, Starvation Hell, where there was a vast hot desert, the animals guarding the floor were surprised by this, while the prisoners, their tongues hanging out due to the dry air, looked towards the sound confusedly from within their cells. On Level 4, Blazing Hell, Sadi, who was whipping prisoners, looked up as the sirens began to blare. Is someone attacking the prison or trying to escape? They wondered. Shut up, Sadi shouted, whipping the man who was murmuring. Now let's see what's happening, she said as she picked up her Den Den Mushi, but it was in the same state as the rest of the prison's communicators. What's going on? She was surprised by this. On Level 6, Eternal Hell, Hannibal was calmly dressing in warm clothes to avoid freezing in that Arctic desert. Take this, eat, he said while throwing pieces of meat to the wolves guarding the floor. Ha! That's right, get strong. I promise that when I become the director, I'll increase your food even more. He exclaimed excitedly, thinking about when he would become the prison's director after overthrowing Magellan. Suddenly, the alarm rang while the wolves continued devouring all the food he threw. Hannibal looked at this in surprise. What's happening? Wait! That's it! The director made a mistake. This is my chance to shine and become the director. He exclaimed excitedly as he grabbed his spear and started running towards the door to go to the elevator. Why isn't my Den Den Mushi working? He exclaimed, not knowing what was happening. On the 6th floor, everything seemed silent. After all, the alarm didn't ring in this place, and the sound of emptiness was the only company for these prisoners until someone started making a sound of effort. She's starting, someone murmured from their cell. She never gives up. Another said with boredom. You should stop that, Jinbei spoke to the person next to him. No, I'm going to get out of here, this person said while trying to remove the shackles. Meanwhile, on the prison's surface, Magellan continued running towards the entrance. The door was thrown to the side while he approached and saw the pirate group walking calmly. The prison guards were trying to stop them, pointing their weapons but trembling and not launching the first attack. Magellan walked past the guards as they gained some morale with the director present, while he watched the group walking as if they owned the place, with Luffy leading them. Director Magellan? I didn't imagine you would be the first person we'd meet as soon as we entered, Luffy commented, tilting his head to see the director with a small smile. Monkey D. Luffy, do you have any idea what you're doing? Magellan spoke with anger. I'm invading the prison. Luffy replied with a smile. Port Guest D. Ace is no longer here. Your search is futile, Magellan responded, knowing the connection the government had passed on to him between Luffy and Ace. Don't worry, I still have business on the 6th level of this prison, and you know that very well. Luffy responded while Magellan clenched his fists, with them starting to drip poison onto the ground. It doesn't matter if I fall here today, I will take you with me. Magellan responded with fury as his devil fruit powers began to manifest. Purple poison. I thought he would use the red one since he's angry. All right, let's make him use all his powers. Luffy commented as he moved away from the group and approached to fight the prison director as he began his invasion. Chapter 293, Impel Down 02, third-person POV. Impel Down, first half of Grand Line. Luffy continued staring at Magellan. Are you going to fight him, Captain? Zoro asked. Yes. Luffy replied as he watched Magellan begin to transform his body into venom, expanding it into a gelatinous layer. What is that? Nami asked. Stay back, he is the user of the Doku Doku no Mi, the poison fruit. He can be fatal to anyone. Luffy said in a serious tone. Do you think you can touch me? Magellan said seriously as layers of purple venom surrounded his body. The soldiers around him started to back away, running in the opposite direction, leaving only Luffy and the prison director in that area. The same could be said for the pirates obeying their captain. Luffy looked at him with a calm gaze before changing to a more serious look, simply exploding the ground below him the next moment as he disappeared. Of course I can, Luffy suddenly said, appearing in front of Magellan, and before he could react, Luffy punched him in the stomach, his fist coated in armament haki. The punch sank into that area, and Magellan felt immense pain, flying backward, unable to believe he was being hit so directly. He flew like a kite before the soldiers behind him could react, feeling enormous pain in the struck area and crashing into the prison wall. Ah, run! The soldiers quickly began to flee to avoid getting caught in the conflict. Hey Luffy, he's made of venom. Are you okay hitting him like that? Nojiko exclaimed from a distance with concern. It's fine. My body is of a mythical Zoan. I can easily resist the venom before defeating him. Luffy said as his haki-coated hand started to burn with the acid of the venom, but he didn't seem bothered by it. Magellan emerged from the broken wall, glaring at Luffy with anger, a line of blood beginning to trickle down his face as he felt sharp pain, falling to his knees the next moment and spitting saliva after the impact of Luffy's punch. If you don't do better than that, you won't protect this prison, Magellan. Luffy commented calmly. Magellan continued spitting until he finally looked at Luffy with a fiercer tone and began to stand up. I will stop you. You will not enter my prison. He exclaimed as a large amount of venom began to expand from his body, starting to grow and form a multi-headed beast above him. So big, Yamato commented from a distance. What is that? Shirahoshi asked. This is getting dangerous, Vivi commented. Hugo, use your powers to protect everyone, Luffy requested and continued. Not even armament haki can stop the effects of the venom. He finished before looking back at Magellan with a serious look. This was the strongest power of his Akuma no Mi, Hydra. He had another level as his venom turned red, which Luffy considered his awakened state. Take this, Magellan said before one of the Hydra's 3 heads lunged at him, exploding on the ground where Luffy was and spreading venom everywhere. Above the space, Luffy appeared untouched by the venom. Another Hydra head started rushing towards Luffy, who quickly propelled himself with his foot, escaping the second attack while cartwheeling sideways and beginning to fly with the third head trying to catch him, escaping by kicking away and dodging the drops of venom spreading around. Luffy seemed to have no difficulty while maintaining a calm face, looking at Magellan creating a new head as he raised his hand before launching another head at Luffy. He backflipped, dodging the attack while clenching his fist, a large amount of flame starting to accumulate before he launched it at an opening that had been created, and a line of fire traveled towards Magellan, who put the Hydra's body in front of him to protect himself as the fire exploded on the venom. Boom! Luffy put a large amount of power into this attack as it exploded, breaking all the corridor walls and making the first floors tremble while people tried to figure out what was happening. The walls began to emerge as Magellan took advantage of the smoke and started to release a poisonous breath into the air to catch Luffy, while a large part of the Hydra was destroyed, but Magellan remained untouched. "You're aiming in the wrong direction," a voice emerged behind him, making Magellan look with stunned eyes, while Luffy, using his hybrid form, calmly stood a few meters away from Magellan, with flames burning tranquilly on his body. Magellan tried to turn around when he saw the punch coming at him again, covering his body with venom to protect himself, but Luffy did not stop. He penetrated the man's gelatinous layer, pushing through until reaching Magellan's face with increased force. Luffy struck him as the space between his fist and the director's face began to distort. Before Magellan could fly backward, Luffy moved away, since his punch had started to spread venom over him, and he did not want to be hit. Luffy disappeared, and the sound of breaking bones was heard as Magellan simply vanished from within his venom, shooting through the mist of venom he had created and crashing through several prison walls.
Bomb! Bomb! Bomb!
He passed through 4 walls before finally stopping in the middle of the first floor.
What is happening?
A guard in the area where Magellan flew asked, frightened, while holding his rifle ready.
"We have to get out of here.
The pirates are attacking," another said, and they finally saw Magellan with his face bleeding, lying on the ground, but his eyes were still open, filled with pure rage, as his face was now a bloody pulp. "I will destroy them," he shouted, and an explosion of red venom began to emerge in that area, expanding until it formed a giant skeleton with Magellan, using what Luffy called his awakening. "It looks like a venomous Susanoo," Luffy commented while watching the thing emerge from a distance with all the prison guards fleeing from there. The venom in this state was corrosive. Wherever it dripped, it began to disintegrate, which was happening to the floor. "Hey, that's dangerous," Alvida said. "I wouldn't want my swords touching that," Zoro murmured as well. All the Straw Hats were watching the situation from a distance, with the walls of the place destroyed. Magellan looked at Luffy and his companions, launching a direct attack among them while a fist of red venom was released from the skeleton, flying towards them in a large area. "Nee, this is bad," Hachi exclaimed. "I'll take care of the fist. Just protect yourselves, so the venom doesn't touch you," Luffy said from a distance. "Leave it to me," Hugo said as he began to create a stone barrier to prevent it from touching them. Luffy faced the attack more directly, launching another line of fire with a punch against that other fist. He used the Moa no Mi to further increase the size of that attack, creating a fist of flames as well. The red venomous fist and purple flaming fist collided. The prison, already in bad shape on its surface with ships still burning and several parts of the structure broken and demolished by Luffy's fight, experienced an even bigger explosion than all the previous ones as the fists incapacitated each other, exploding all the other walls around, while its top began to crumble, spreading flames and venom everywhere. Hugo completed his barrier as the venom hit it, but it soon started to corrode, spreading on the ground. "We need to get out of here," he said as everyone began to use Geppo to avoid being hit. All the Straw Hats were in the air watching the battle, while Luffy had left the prison through the hole created in the roof from the impact to escape the venom. "You shouldn't have involved my crew in this conflict, Magellan," Luffy commented, looking at him with a bit of disappointment. Magellan didn't seem to care, staring at Luffy with the same tone as before, still with his face bleeding. "I will kill them," he said, and began to launch another attack towards his companions, who quickly started to fly upwards, escaping the red venom that destroyed even more of the prison's upper part. The guards were heading to the second level, fleeing the chaos, as Magellan was destroying everything. Even the communication room no longer existed, and with the connection interrupted, he didn't mind destroying everything to prevent Luffy from advancing into the prison. "Hey Luffy, can I cut him? He's attacking us," Lamy complained in the air. "Leave him to me," Luffy requested, deciding to end the fight while Magellan looked up at the sky in frustration. Luffy raised his hands and began to create a ball of fire that expanded each moment, growing to a diameter of 20 meters. "Take this," Luffy said before throwing it at Magellan below him, who quickly used the venomous skeleton to protect himself from the attack. A blinding light emerged, dazzling everyone in the area to the point that if the marine ships were still before the gate of justice, they could see the light appearing on the horizon. The explosion began to consume everything, blowing up the rest of the prison on the surface, while the chaos spread to the rest of the prison, causing it to tremble. Even the infamous criminals on level 6 felt the strong tremor in Impel Down, making them wonder what was happening. In the midst of that chaos, the director appeared with part of his body burned, while there were no more walls around him. His prison was destroyed in that part. Magellan was frustrated while maintaining his awakening, with the skeleton beginning to regenerate again. The ground cracked in front of him as Luffy landed, still maintaining his hybrid form. "It was a good fight, but let's end this," Luffy said calmly while Magellan looked at him, wondering what he would do. "You may have protected yourself from the explosion, but this ends here," Luffy said as he took his pistol and pointed it at him, firing the next moment while the bullet gained 90 times the properties. Luffy used a real bullet instead of his flames for the first time in that weapon. The bullet fired as Magellan used the skeleton to protect himself, but the bullet was so fast that its penetration power had increased, passing through the entire venom layer before it could start to corrode. Magellan only felt a sharp pain in his right chest and looked down to see blood gushing out, making him look stunned as his venom seemed to return to normal. Losing strength and dissipating the skeleton, he fell to his knees on the ground a moment later. "You're lucky I have no reason to kill you, but don't meddle in my business anymore. Stay quiet, and you'll survive," Luffy said while Magellan looked at him stunned and couldn't see Luffy knocking him out the next moment with a hockey-infused fist, making the Impel Down director collapse unconscious, with blood still flowing from his right chest, as Luffy didn't aim for his heart, only breaking his face. "Luffy!" Robin approached Luffy, looking at his hands that still had venom on them. "It's okay." Luffy shrugged, shifting out of his hybrid form and back to normal. He looked at his companions and called one of them. "Reiju, I need you to use the Phoenix regeneration on me," he requested as she nodded. Luffy recovered while his companions were in an area not affected by the venom, as the whole place was scattered with it. "You destroyed all of Impel Down, Luffy," Usopp cried as the place was opened to the sky, with the entire structure crumbling. "Yes, I didn't expect to fight Magellan so soon, but we were lucky not to do it in the submerged part of the prison," Luffy commented, looking at all the destruction he caused. "What do we do now, Demon?" NL asked. "We're going to invade the prison. We don't even need someone to anticipate ships coming from Marineford as soon as they notice something strange. After all, everyone can see the top of the prison demolished," Luffy reasoned, not caring if the Marines sent reinforcements, as he still had to worry about the war at HQ. "Let's go to the first level," Luffy announced, heading for the stairs that descended, leaving Magellan fallen there. He had some interesting things on the first floor, one of which was to see if Buggy was there, as he had something precious on him at that moment. Chapter 294, Impel Down 03, Third-Person POV Impel Down, First Half of Grand Line. Luffy felt his hands relieved of the itch that Magellan's poison had caused as soon as it hit them. He began to head for the stairs leading to the second level, while Enel's static field continued to block all communication, creating a static field that not even the log pose could identify the location. This left the Marines still struggling to get here. Bepo might get lost for a while, but he would quickly catch up before they reached Marineford, as soon as they left the prison. As they opened the door, the alarm was still flashing blue, while hundreds of soldiers, waiting for the fight to end on the surface, were startled by Luffy appearing there with his crew as they passed through the door calmly. Luffy smiled at them, and when they went to point their weapons at him, he once again released the Conqueror's haki, knocking down the crowd of people except for one person. "Hey Luffy, are you going to knock everyone down with your haki?" Usopp asked, seeing Luffy simply using this ability multiple times. "They're just soldiers. There's no reason not to use it," Luffy commented as he began to walk towards the only person standing there. Domino took a step back, lacking the courage to attack Luffy with her whip. "Hey, I didn't know there was such a beautiful woman in this dump," Luffy lied with a smile, knowing of her existence, while the girls behind him glared at him with killing eyes, but he didn't care. He continued to approach the woman, leaving her with no escape. "I want the map of the prison in your back pocket," Luffy demanded. "I'll never give it up," she exclaimed. "As if you had a choice," Luffy commented as he appeared behind her and took the map without her reacting. "I didn't want to be rude by grabbing a woman's butt who's not my wife, but you left me no choice," he whispered while looking at the map and keeping it open, with Domino stepping back frustrated. "You grabbed my butt!" she shouted angrily at Luffy's cheeky move. "I don't know what you're talking about," Luffy commented while seeing half a dozen pairs of eyes staring at him. "Flirt. He doesn't waste time." Luffy ignored his wife's burst of dissatisfaction with his behavior and looked at Domino with one eye before releasing his haki and making her fall to the ground. "Let's see how this prison works," Luffy said, calmly looking at the map as he walked forward. This floor had giant trees with red coloration, called the Scarlet Sea, because their leaves had blades that cut anyone who passed close. "Let's go." Luffy ignored his women's indignation and moved forward, debating whether to destroy this place. But he thought it wasn't necessary, considering they would pass through the safe areas without any opponents capable of stopping them. "Luffy, there's someone here we haven't seen in a long time." Yamato, one of the few who didn't mind if Luffy flirted with other women, approached him and said, "Yes, he's on this floor, and I intend to see him," Luffy commented with a smile. The prisoners in their cells saw the strange movement while guards ran back and forth outside their cells. "Hey, what are those explosions? What's happening?" "You don't know, but I heard some guards saying they captured an important member of Whitebeard's crew. Maybe he came in person to rescue his ally," another prisoner commented, leaving those who heard in their cell quite surprised. As they were isolated, the guards' conversations were the only thing that kept them informed about what was happening in the world unless a new prisoner recently transferred to the prison spoke up. "Whitebeard is here!" One specific prisoner, with a clown nose and green hair while wearing striped clothes, was alarmed. "Wait! This might be my chance!" he exclaimed. After all, he had hidden the fact that he was a devil fruit user because he was very weak. Buggy smiled joyfully as his body began to split in half and pass through the bars. "Hey, how did you get out?" the prisoners shouted, watching Buggy reassemble his body freely outside the cell. "Ha! I finally will be free after months imprisoned in this place, finally! Goodbye, you idiots!" Buggy exclaimed, mocking his former cellmates as he began to run through the corridors while the guards did the same, trying to hide. He continued running until he saw a corridor with some guards fleeing. "He's here! Run! It's the Straw Hat! He's going to kill us!" Buggy looked surprised at the guards' exclamations as they ran in front of him. Suddenly, an explosion of flames blew them away, scaring him even more. "Straw Hat and purple flames," he murmured and widened his eyes, realizing it wasn't Whitebeard, but Monkey D. Luffy here. "I have to run," he said, stepping back and ready to run in the opposite direction. Buggy stopped as soon as he heard the voice behind him, slowly turning to see Luffy standing there with his arms crossed, looking at him with interest. "It's been a long time since I last saw you," Luffy said calmly. "Straw Hat," Buggy said as snot ran from his nose. With this pirate in front of him, it was someone he wanted revenge on, but now facing him, he knew Luffy was a much bigger monster than he had previously thought. A clown with a red nose?" Enel murmured disdainfully. "Who are you calling a clown with a red nose?" Buggy exclaimed angrily at Enel after hearing that before returning to his frightened expression. "Buggy, you came here after all?" Alvida said, looking at Buggy. He had sought her out in Logtown for an alliance against Luffy, but she had refused, waiting for her future husband. "Whew!" A huge sound emerged at that moment, with Choo-Choo turning into Cerberus and looking at a more terrified Buggy, seeing that monster looking at him as its prey. "What is that?" he exclaimed, trying to run. "This is the dog from Orangetown, the city you looted when we first met. Your subordinates almost killed him, so don't be surprised if he has to kill you now." Luffy decided to explain why Choo-Choo was acting that way towards the clown. His gaze returned to Choo-Choo, who opened its 3 mouths, emitting its powers. "Calm down, Choo-Choo. I need him alive. If you want revenge, beat him up later, but don't kill him, Luffy requested, and Choo-Choo, with lightning, fire, and ice ready to fire, seemed to calm down, closing its mouths and shrinking back to its normal form. Well, now that we've finally met, I can take something from you that's quite precious to you, Luffy said, and before Buggy could react, a wave of haki hit him. Buggy saw the wave pass through him and looked at Luffy confused, wondering what that was. My haki doesn't work against you. Luffy was surprised by this. Of all the people who could resist him, Luffy never considered Buggy among them. Well, it seems that in the end, you were always special, he commented, looking at Buggy, still confused with some interest, and disappeared. But that doesn't matter much, Luffy said, appearing behind Buggy and slapping him on the head before he fell unconscious this time. His crew was coming calmly as the captain continued to clear the way. They were even bored. Hey, Luffy, are you going to cut him like that? Vivi exclaimed, seeing Luffy draw Ace from the sheath in front of the fallen Buggy. Many others looked surprised at Luffy. After all, he didn't kill unconscious opponents. You didn't know him? He possesses the Barabara no Mi, Nami told them. He almost killed me once when I was his prisoner in Choo-Choo's town, she explained to those who didn't know Buggy. Luffy moved his sword and cut off one of Buggy's arms, revealing a paper between them. Here it is, Captain John's map. Luffy smiled with satisfaction. What is this? Nojiko asked as her sister pushed her to get closer to Luffy. Nami screamed at Luffy, hugging him and looking at the paper. A treasure map, she exclaimed, her eyes returning to their usual berry symbol. Yes, the map that might lead to the treasure left by Rox D. Zebek. Luffy commented while Nami seemed to get more and more excited about it. That's interesting. Let's look for the location on this map, Alvida asked, also with interest. Maybe not as much as Nami, but as a pirate, she also had her attention on finding treasures. It's in the New World. We'll search for it when we head to that sea, Luffy said as they nodded. A treasure hunt. That sounds so fun, Shirahoshi exclaimed happily. Anyway, let's keep going, Luffy said as he reattached Buggy's arm and moved forward, leaving the unconscious clown on the ground. They continued their path with Luffy following the map he had taken, entering the cell area of level 1, while people looked at him surprised, even murmuring that he wasn't Whitebeard as many had thought. Who is this? Someone asked, looking at Luffy confusedly, just like his crew coming behind him. After all, they were here before Luffy gained his fame in the world. I don't know, but they're invading the prison, aren't they? The man murmured with boredom before even recognizing his own words. What? He's invading the prison? Many exclaimed at that moment. They're the pirate group I talked about a few months ago. They're the Straw Hats who defeated 2 Shichibukai and a vice-admiral in Alabasta. Another exclaimed, looking at Luffy passing with his group among them. They defeated 2 Shichibukai and a vice-admiral? The prisoners looked at Luffy stunned by that. You fool, I was imprisoned last week. You don't even know that he fought 2 admirals before destroying the government's judicial island. Eni's lobby doesn't exist anymore. A man who hadn't said anything about Luffy when he arrived announced this, leaving all the level 1 prisoners shocked with this information. He's also Garp's grandson, the Marine who fought Roger head-on, another exclaimed. What, the hero of the Navy's grandson became a pirate? This sounds amazing, another started to laugh. Hey, Garp's grandson, get me out of here and I'll follow you for the rest of my life, someone began to shout from the cells. Yes, recruit me into your crew. Choose me, I'll be your best subordinate, Captain Monkey D. Luffy. They started to exclaim while Luffy sighed. He didn't have time to deal with them now. Shut up, he simply said, releasing another wave of haki. The place fell silent immediately. Luffy could make them faint, kneel, or even shut up as their sovereign commanded with his haki, so everyone could see that this pirate wasn't just anyone, especially when they felt their mouths close immediately with that order, just watching Luffy continue his way without saying anything else. Luffy and his crew finally found the stairs to level 2, an interesting place full of beasts. Luffy looked at his loyal dog. Hey, Choo-Choo, how about you fight some beasts, he asked. Wolf, wolf, Choo-Choo barked excitedly. Chapter 295, Impel Down 04, Third-Person POV, Impel Down, First Half of Grand Line. Luffy entered the second floor of Impel Down while the sounds of beasts echoed through the air with his group following close behind. "Wolf, wolf!" Chushu barked beside Luffy. "Do you want to catch it?" Luffy asked the animal with interest, as it nodded. "Then go ahead," Luffy ordered. "Wolf!" he barked as he ran ahead down the corridors. "Will he be okay?" Reiju asked, still hearing the animal's footsteps in the distance. "Of course he will. He's the alpha beast right now," Luffy said with a slight smile. Meanwhile, the prisoners, even more dangerous than those on the first level, were wondering what all the explosions from earlier were about, not knowing exactly what was happening. This could be attributed to the beasts guarding that floor. Giant birds, lions, spiders, even basilisks, and manticores were guarding the cells of those prisoners. "What could be happening? The animals seem agitated," one prisoner said. "Maybe a new beast on the floor?" another said. After all, the beasts would compete whenever another one came to this floor, fighting each other to see who would be the alpha. "You're right. Look at that shadow coming from the corridor." A prisoner pointed to a wall with light coming from one of the corridors, and a huge shadow began to appear there, with a kind of beast with 4 legs walking calmly through the place. "I don't recognize that beast. It must be a new monster they brought in. Maybe the tremors were caused by it." A prisoner pointed, trembling. "Be careful. The beasts will fight each other," another pointed out, as all the animals in that corridor also looked at the shadow on the wall, which was approaching every moment. "What kind of monster is that?" another murmured as the beast finally appeared in the corridor. Chushu finally appeared curious. As he came across a corridor, he looked back and saw that the light from the path he followed made his shadow appear gigantic. He saw several beasts and prisoners looking at him at that moment, as he stared back at them with curiosity. "What? Just a simple dog?" a prisoner murmured, looking at the animal that sat at the front of the corridor, while the shadow still projected a large monster, tricking them with the light and optical illusion. "Wait, why is there a dog here? He'll be killed by the beasts," another prisoner said, watching the beasts growling at Chushu. Chushu didn't seem afraid. He just looked at the creatures about to attack him with curiosity as he sat there. He then stood up and began to walk forward. "I have to admit, the mutt has courage," someone murmured from their cell. "Tsk, let's see the dog die with one bite. I wish I had a dog in my cell to keep me company," another commented. Chushu ignored the conversations and mockery the prisoners were throwing at him, and looked seriously at the beasts before growling. His body began to change at that moment, catching all the spectators off guard. A lion charged and jumped on him at that moment to kill him, not liking having such a small animal on this floor. But Chushu didn't stop growing. When the lion saw the form of Cerberus with 3 heads, it couldn't even react as it was bitten by one of the heads, being held suspended in the air, despairing at that moment. "What is this dog?" People screamed in their cells, seeing the small dog transforming into a mythical beast, while everyone felt immense fear. The animals were no different, seeing that the animal they had mocked and called to fight had become a predator, making them stop and emit sounds, looking at Cerberus with fear. But it was too late. The lion didn't even see its death coming as the head that held it emitted fire, turning it into a barbecue the next moment and being spat out by Chushu as if he had eaten something bad. "That's the new beast." The prisoners swallowed hard, watching Cerberus's actions. "That thing shouldn't be on this floor," they exclaimed, knowing there were more powerful beasts on other floors. "Ho!" Chushu began growling at the other creatures, as they barely had time to move away before he jumped, his paws so large that they covered the roofs of numerous cells, trembling with his advance. A war erupted as Chushu began fighting against all those beasts on the floors. The prisoners could only watch the massacre happening as that beast started destroying everything. "Please save me. I don't want to be eaten by this thing." The prisoners began to feel fear, believing that after the beasts, Cerberus would come after them. But their screams were not heard with no guards around, or were muffled by the sound of elemental explosions and beasts lamenting and being killed, echoing throughout the place. He made quite a mess. Luffy whistled as he walked, reaching the prisoners' corridor. He also knows how to scare these prisoners. Quina couldn't help but comment as she looked at the cells with people trembling in a corner. "He's a good dog," Luffy said. "How is he a good dog when he's massacring all the animals?" Nami shouted at Luffy as the place was infested with fallen dead beasts. They saw a basilisk screaming and crying while it was in Cerberus's mouth, a creature even larger than the snake. "Choo-choo, we're heading to the 3rd level. Finish this quickly and let's move on," Luffy requested while Choo-choo nodded, returning to normal after frying the snake with lightning. They proceeded to the 3rd floor once they found the key. Meanwhile, in the elevator reaching the 1st floor, Hannibal finally opened the elevator with a group of wolves that had followed him from the 5th floor. Luffy knew about the elevator, but chose to walk from floor to floor to kill time, while most of his crew was still unaware of it. This would lead to some protests. As for Hannibal, when the door opened, he quickly jumped out with his spear, and the wolves followed him. "Where are the intruders?" he shouted, pointing his weapon, with the wolves circling him growling. But what he saw in front of him left him bewildered. There was nothing but debris scattered all over the place, and what shocked him the most was that he could see the sky above the sea. "What is happening?" Hannibal was shocked. He continued looking at it for at least 10 seconds while the wolves seemed to be having the same experience. "Sir Hannibal!" He finally snapped out of his daze when he heard someone calling his name. He looked to see a group of guards running towards him. "Lord Hannibal, the prison is under attack. They've destroyed the entire surface area and are advancing to level 2 or even 3 as we speak." The guards seemed scared by this. Who are they? And why have they destroyed this place? "Why is my Den Mushi not working?" Hannibal shouted. "Where is Director Magellan?" he demanded. "Communication has been cut, the marine ships are destroyed or damaged, and the marines are lying unconscious, thanks to the pirates, and they are none other than the Straw Hat pirates who've been in the news lately," they said, startling Hannibal. Before he could say anything, they continued speaking. "As for Director Magellan, he is knocked out," he said while pointing to one side of the entire destruction, where many parts were corroded by Magellan's own ability. Hannibal could see a large crowd of guards gathered there. "The Straw Hats," he said as he ran towards that group with the guards who approached him right behind. Magellan was lying on the ground in the middle of a small crater with his chest bleeding, while some people were trying to stop the hemorrhage, and his face was also destroyed. He was completely unconscious in that state. Hannibal was shocked as he passed through the crowd with the wolves from the 5th floor following him. "This is bad." Hannibal looked afraid, seeing Director Magellan in that state, and glanced at the growing crowd of guards, pushing his fear aside. "Maybe this is my big chance to shine," he couldn't help but murmur as his dream began to overshadow the fear he felt at that moment. "Yes, this is my chance." Hannibal finally seemed to gain some confidence. He puffed out his chest as he faced all the men in front of him. "Listen up, everyone. Our duty is to protect this prison with all our strength." He began to try boosting the group's morale, while everyone looked at him, confused, as they were in the middle of a crisis, and Hannibal was suddenly bringing this up. "But they are the Straw Hats. We can't beat them. Even Magellan couldn't defeat them and was taken down like a stray dog." Someone murmured without any confidence. "Don't be a coward. The world needs us to protect them from these pirates and the prisoners in the cells below us. We need to stop them and defeat them. And more importantly, this prison needs me. I am now taking command and will stop the pirates, leading us to victory. I will finally become the director," Hannibal exclaimed. The guards looked at each other, unsure of what to say. They doubted if they could really stop the pirates. "Let's defeat them," Hannibal continued shouting alone. People remained silent while Hannibal seemed to be dreaming of his promotion to director, and the wolves behind him seemed excited too, with the promise of getting larger pieces of meat in their meals. "I guess we should fight," one guard said, although not very enthusiastically. "Yes, maybe we should fight with all our strength against the enemy," another murmured. "We are the guards of the most dangerous and protected prison in the world. All the people in the world are counting on us to keep these prisoners in their cells," a third murmured. It was a strange situation. While Hannibal continued shouting and dreaming of being director with his dogs, the guards talked among themselves. "Let's fight them, even if it costs us our lives." "That's right. Let's fight the Straw Hats." The guards started shouting at each other, gaining more and more morale. Hannibal looked at this with pride. "I can inspire people," he screamed internally, thinking it was a quality of a director, but he didn't know they were inspired by themselves while discussing, ignoring all his previous speeches. "Come on, men. Let's go down to the prison and stop them." Hannibal shouted while everyone nodded now. "Yes!" The chorus came from the crowd, and Hannibal headed for the elevator with the guards and wolves. Meanwhile, on the first level, Domino woke up at that moment. She saw the still unconscious guards around her. She couldn't help but remember what happened, feeling a vein bulging on her forehead. She touched her bottom. "He squeezed my butt and got away with it. This won't stand." She growled and began waking the guards with her whip, ready to fight Luffy on the lower floors or wherever he was. "I'll capture him and give him several lashes," she shouted as she saw the guards yelling as she hit them. Luffy didn't even know he had entered the sights of a vengeful woman. Buggy also woke up from the ground, blinking and trying to orient himself about what had happened. "Where is Straw Hat?" he growled, with the memory of being knocked out by him, not knowing his map had been stolen. Otherwise, Buggy would be at his peak of fury. There was no more sign of Luffy in the corridor, making Buggy wonder where he had gone. "No matter, I can still get out of here," he thought, but then looked at the distant cells. "Maybe I can free them." He had an idea and decided to go after the cell keys to gain an advantage while trying to escape. Chapter 296, Impel Down 5, Third-Person POV, Marineford, first half of Grand Line. While chaos ensued in Impel Down, without the world truly knowing what was happening in one of the most fortified places in the world, hours began to pass since the first attack, and they started to realize something was wrong. "Our prisoner is being kept in a special cell until the execution tomorrow," an officer reported Ace's situation. "I understand." Sengoku spoke calmly, ready to document all reports before the war. "You may go," he requested as the man left the room, but just as the door was about to close, it was opened again with other officers running into the room. "What is it now?" Sengoku asked, raising an eyebrow. "Fleet Admiral, we searched for the Shichibukai Marshal D. Teach as you requested, but we couldn't find him anywhere." He spoke quickly with urgency. "He's not at Marineford?" Sengoku asked, frowning. "Fleet Admiral, there's a warship missing from our ports," the man reported. "What? Are you saying that Shichibukai fled with one of our ships?" Sengoku, already furious, now shattered the table beneath him. "Yes, we don't know how they did it, but it's very likely that the ship we can't locate is in the Shichibukai's possession," the officer stated. "What is he doing, deserting hours before the war?" Sengoku couldn't understand the logic behind this on the eve of battle. "I'll check this with the monitoring room," Sengoku said, picking up the Den Mushi, turning it back on after having it off during the last meeting he had with the admirals and vice-admirals before completing the report with the officers who had just appeared. He saw there were many missed calls at that moment, and as soon as he turned on the Den Mushi, it didn't take long for it to ring. "Hello," Sengoku answered. "Fleet Vice-Admiral, we lost contact with Impel Down." The urgency in the voice on the other side of the Den Mushi was evident. "What do you mean lost contact? When did this happen?" Sengoku asked, not liking the situation at all. "We contacted them half an hour ago to discuss some prisoners we were transferring before the war, but communication seems to be cut off. There's no call at all." The Den Mushi relayed while everyone near Sengoku, listening, frowned. "What is this? When was the last time you contacted Impel Down?" Sengoku inquired. "The last time was when the admirals took Ace out of prison," reported the sailor. "At least 6 hours ago. This is bad. I can't pull forces from here with Ace. What's causing this? Could it be Whitebeard attacking the prison?" Sengoku didn't know what to say, but he knew the situation was urgent. "We'll send a ship with vice-admirals to check the situation," he ordered, knowing that the prison was a priority, aware of the criminals housed there. He hung up the Den Mushi and called the communication room with the sailors still waiting. "Fleet Vice-Admiral." A new urgent voice emerged from the Den Den Mushi. Sengoku, about to ask about Teach, frowned, sensing more problems arising. "The gate of justice. It has been opened," shouted the man. "What? Who did that? For whom?" Sengoku shouted back. "We don't know. Our sailors opened it. They seem to have entered some kind of trance. A ship we can't identify did this and is heading towards Impel Down," they warned. "What is all this? Send 4 warships to the prison immediately. I need to know what's happening," Sengoku shouted furiously, his voice echoing through Marineford. As night fell, a marine warship was at full speed towards Impel Down. "Ziaha!" Teach was laughing. "You see, I managed to put all those sailors under my control. It was easy to make them open the gate for us," Lafitte commented beside him. "Let's go to the prison," Burgess celebrated. Van Augur was silently sitting on the edge of the ship, cleaning his rifle. "I'm so tired." Doc Q lay on the deck with his horse, both looking very exhausted. Meanwhile, in Impel Down, unaware that night had already fallen on the surface, Luffy was staring in the middle of the desert of the prison's 3rd level, where ice was scattered around the area. Yamato had created the ice for the members who didn't like the desert heat, with Chopper hugging an ice pillar and pressing his face against it. "Luffy, we've been here for a while. How much longer are we staying?" Nami complained, using her powers to blow wind on her face to escape the heat. "Let's wait for them to finish," Luffy said, looking ahead as a shadow dashed through the air, heading towards its opponent, one of the guards of this level, a boar using a mace and other animals. The one fighting them was Zoro, who had said he wanted to stop just walking and face something out of boredom. Zoro passed by his opponent before cutting and defeating him. "Well, he finally beat him. Let's go to the next level," Luffy commented as everyone nodded, finally leaving the place where they had to watch some members fighting. They quickly passed by several defeated animals and cells, where people were so dehydrated they could barely speak or ask for help. "They look so tired. I'll help them," Shirahoshi said with pity and started creating water, spraying it on all the prisoners who were surprised by this as they continued on their way, nearly drowning the prisoners with the water jet the mermaid had released. They kept descending until they reached the 4th level, and as soon as they opened it, they saw a crowd of guards waiting at the entrance with a scantily clad woman in a pink elastic outfit and a whip in her hand. "What do we have here? Another little treat in this prison," Luffy commented. "You only pay attention to women," Nami complained. "Of course not, only to beautiful women," Luffy replied. "That's what I'm talking about," Nami grimaced, showing shark teeth. While all the prison soldiers looked at the group, slightly trembling, Sadi eyed Luffy and his group with a piercing gaze, her chest puffed out, not seeming afraid as she lightly swung the whip in her hands. Her lips curled into a malicious smile, and she stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Luffy. "Oh, it seems we have a bunch of cheeky intruders here," she said, her voice full of provocation. "And you, Straw Hat Captain, think you can pass through here without facing the wrath of Impel Down?" Luffy raised an eyebrow at this woman, who thought they were mere invaders. Wouldn't this be an offense to his reputation? But Luffy didn't even need to respond, because the guards looked at the head guard with cautious eyes, wondering if she had hit her head or something. "Miss Sadi, they are the Straw Hats. The captain has a bounty of 1 billion berries," one of the guards said, frightened. 1 billion! That's right, no pirate with such a bounty has passed by me. After all, they all go straight to the 6th level. Now I have a chance. I'll punish him so much he'll like it," she exclaimed, almost having an orgasm right there, thinking about how to make Luffy suffer. Luffy looked at her as if she were an idiot. She stopped her show and looked at him with desire as she stretched her whip under everyone's gaze. "Now you will." She didn't finish speaking before a huge claw grabbed her and started throwing her away while keeping her trapped in the claw. "Nami?" Luffy looked at his wife, who kept her hands glowing green, continuing to throw the woman to the other side of this level while she screamed in the air. "Stop wasting time with these things, Luffy. Are you here to flirt?" she complained. "Flirt? It was that crazy woman who started saying all those things." Luffy shrugged and turned his attention to the soldiers in front of him, who were still staring. The soldiers kept watching the woman fly until they turned back to Luffy, who was looking at them with shining eyes. "We're screwed." They choked before fainting from another wave of haki. "I'm not going to kill them like this, for now. Guys, let's keep moving," Luffy said, continuing forward and passing by the fallen soldiers. "This level is worse than the last one," Usopp exclaimed, his tongue sticking out from the heat. "Yamato, give me ice," Chopper said tiredly to the vice captain, who looked at him and began creating ice with her hand. Choo-Choo walked while opening his mouth and blowing cold air as he cooled off. The rest of the crew was sweating but stayed strong, walking through the prison while the prisoners were in a pitiful state. Shirahoshi began pouring more water on the prisoners, who screamed their thanks a moment later. They continued crossing a bridge over a lake of lava when a group of new guards appeared, led by Hannibal with a spear. Isn't that Hannibal, the director of Impel Down?" Luffy commented, teasing this comical figure. Hannibal was serious, but when he heard that, his eyes sparkled. "You know me?" He was pleasantly surprised. Of course, there has never been a more competent director than Hannibal in the history of Impel Down, Luffy said with a smile. "Is Luffy okay?" Vivi asked, confused, already used to the heat of Alabasta, so this level didn't affect her much. "He certainly wants something from that strange guy," Nojiko commented. "Master, do you need anything?" Baby 5 shouted, wanting to be useful to Luffy. Meanwhile, Hannibal seemed so excited, and the soldiers and wolves behind him were confused, as the enemy was praising the vice director after invading the place. "I got this map, Director Hannibal, but it doesn't say anything about the entrance to level 6. Can you tell me how to get to level 5? Luffy asked. "Of course, as a good director of this prison, I will tell you. It's on the south side of the floor, with a sea-stone door used for emergencies, or you can use the elevator itself." Hannibal realized at that moment and shut his mouth, while Luffy grinned. "Thank you, Hannibal. You've been very helpful. I'll check the entrance," Luffy commented as Hannibal prepared for battle. "You tricked me," he shouted, but the next moment he fell to the ground along with the soldiers and wolves due to the haki. "I'm getting really good with my haki. Let's go," Luffy said while the crew looked at him, thinking he was very shameless. It didn't take long for another group to approach them. It was Domino again, using the elevator a moment later. "Monkey D. Luffy, you'll pay for what you did," Domino exclaimed as the soldiers pointed their weapons, despite feeling fear. "You don't give up, do you?" Luffy commented before once again releasing his haki. He continued walking and grabbed Domino, shrinking her and placing her in a small cage. "Are you kidnapping her?" Kuina asked, raising an eyebrow. "This place will get dangerous. It's better to keep her in a safe place," Luffy said despite the unsatisfied looks. It wasn't a lie. The prisoners would be released for some reason, and he knew about Blackbeard's arrival. So he really wanted to protect her. "We're arriving at level 5, Luffy announced as they reached a freezing door. Chapter 297, Impel Down 06, third-person POV, Marineford, first half of Grand Line. After passing through the prison guards, they finally came to the gate leading to the 5th level, which was frozen due to the harsh snow of the floor. Luffy then opened the gate his way, disappearing and exploding it with a powerful punch to the metal, sending the door flying inward as it was destroyed. With the cold air beginning to come towards them, and the crew members who had no affinity for ice, which was the element most present among the devil fruit users, being Yamato, Kuina, and Choo-Choo, or even fire, with Luffy and Reiju, all the others felt the icy wind as their bodies began to tremble. "Luffy, please, close this door," Vivi immediately complained. "Luffy," Nojiko also complained in her way as she tried to warm herself up by generating small explosions in her hand. Robin didn't complain as she kept herself hugged with several created arms, but still trembling. "Luffy, it's freezing," Nami complained. "I need to warm up," Usopp shouted as he tried to create light to generate heat, and Chopper tried to feel the warmth next to him. "Oh, sorry about that. Here you go." Luffy looked at his crew and opened the system store, buying suitable clothes for the entire crew. "Thank you," Chopper shouted, trembling as he put on his clothes. "Nee, that's much better," Hachi said, warming up with clothes for his 6 arms. Luffy nodded and continued without putting on any extra clothes, just his cloak without a shirt. You certainly know how to tremble, Reiju commented, looking at Lami. You wretch, Lami murmured as she warmed up with her clothes. Reiju, on the other hand, had the phoenix flames and kept her pink dress with the feathers out, not minding entering a frozen area. Luffy continued walking through the floor as the scene of heat and lava was replaced by a frozen desert. As they walked through the place, there were many prisoners frozen in their cells. Are they dead? Shirahoshi asked while staying in warm clothes and clinging to Luffy's back as he generated heat. I think so. No one should survive this. Alvida replied while clinging to one of Luffy's arms and hanging from him. Vivi was clinging to the other arm. When are we leaving this place? I hate the cold, Nami said as she had feathers around Luffy's waist, her breasts against his chest. Lami said nothing as she clung to Luffy's side, her breast squeezed against his rib. It was a common scene for these women when they arrived in cold regions. The same happened in the Drum Kingdom. Let's head straight for the exit from here, Luffy said, not even bothered by being surrounded by women, while the rest of his crew could only see him being clung to from all sides. They followed the direction Hannibal had told Luffy, and it didn't take long to reach the place where there was the emergency entrance. They found a door on the ground sometime later, with Luffy also knocking down all the wild wolves of this floor with his haki. Luffy approached the wheel on top of the door and started to turn it, while the lid opened the entrance, revealing a staircase to the next level. The girls finally let go of Luffy as they continued down the stairs, closing the door behind them, and Luffy descended for a while until he finally stopped halfway. Is there a problem, Captain? Hugo asked, seeing Luffy standing still. Luffy didn't respond immediately. He just looked at the wall and spoke. NL, can you sense anything behind that wall? He asked his best user of observation haki when it came to covering a large area. Yes, I sense a bunch of mortals on that side. He spoke arrogantly. Got it, Luffy said as he thought about how to get through the brick and stone walls without breaking them. Hugo, can you open a passage with your powers? He asked, and Hugo, despite not knowing what his captain's goal was, approached the wall to feel it. Luffy could use Lami, but she didn't have such a long reach. I can open a passage up to 150 meters, he said, and Luffy nodded. Do it, he ordered. Using the power of the earth, the wall began to open, creating a passage as large as the corridor they were in, expanding forward. Good job, let's go, Luffy said as he created a flame with his hand, and a ball of fire began to fly above him, following him, illuminating the perfect path that Hugo created. Luffy, what is this? Where are we going, and how are there people that NL mentioned here? Nojiko asked, confused. There's a group of people hidden between level 5 and 6. That's why I asked as soon as I could feel some small presences in a straight line, Luffy explained. Hidden people? Robin couldn't help but ask. Yes, they are agents of the Revolutionary Army. One of the commanders is hiding while people think he is dead. I'll ask if he wants to come out and join us. After all, this is an opportunity for him to leave as well. Luffy commented as they finally reached the end of the path, arriving at an empty corridor. However, ahead, the corridor was illuminated by a party happening in the next room. Emporio Ivankov was singing for his audience while everyone seemed excited, dancing and partying as they were accustomed to. Today, in particular, some strange things began happening, like the radio they had stolen from the prison stopped working, and they no longer heard any of its communications, something that kept them alert to what was happening in the prison. Or the tremors with loud noises coming from the floors above. They thought this could be normal. After all, what else could they do while remaining on floor 5.5? Everything had returned to New Kama Land, so they resumed partying, and all the transvestites seemed to be having fun, eating and drinking the food from the depot they had stolen. Perhaps because they were so excited, they didn't even notice the strange people coming from the corridor while they stopped to watch the show. What is this? Why is everyone wearing makeup and wigs? Yamato asked curiously. They seem so excited. It must be a fun party, Shirahoshi exclaimed. Well, I never imagined there was a prisoners' party happening in the world's largest prison, Usopp murmured. Who are these people? That guy sings terribly. Nami complained while the big-headed man wearing strange clothes with blue hair, a crown, and makeup sang out of tune, but the people around seemed to enjoy it. This is Ivankov, user of the hormone fruit. He can transform any person into a woman or a man, as well as alter and give any hormones to people, being able to cure them of diseases, poisons, or even give them a boost of energy, Luffy commented. Seems quite useful, although it seems useless to change people's sex, Vivi commented. Changing people's sexes, Quina murmured. After all, this would give her a chance to be a man. Her father always said she couldn't follow her dreams because she was a woman. Now she could make him believe in her too. No, I must prove that even as a woman, I can become the best swordsman in the world and... She lifted her head and saw Luffy staring at her with eyes expecting her response, which caught her by surprise. Good thing you didn't choose that. I prefer you feminine, Luffy responded with a smile while the people around looked without understanding what he meant, but Quina immediately blushed. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, crossing her arms. Luffy just smiled and turned his attention forward, waiting for his presence to be noticed. A man was about to say something to his friend dressed as a woman when he saw the group of 19 people standing at the entrance of the corridor, calmly observing them while the king of New Kama Land sang. Who are they? Another transvestite pointed at them, drawing the attention of their colleagues. Are they prison guards? One of them exclaimed. They're not wearing prison clothes, but it doesn't change the fact that we've been discovered, he shouted in fear. Inazuma approached Ivankov, who was singing with urgency. What is it? Can't you see I'm singing? He exclaimed at his confused subordinate. We have company, Inazuma said seriously, and Ivankov looked ahead, finally paying attention and seeing the group of people with all the transvestites already eyeing them cautiously. Ivankov didn't think twice before jumping off the stage, doing a pirouette in the air with both legs together and arms extended, landing in front of the group with a serious look. Who are you? He exclaimed, ready for a fight, with his companions also preparing for a possible fight. Is that how you greet your boss's son, Ivankov? Luffy calmly approached the man. Ivankov blinked a few times, looking at Luffy without understanding. Boss's son? Chief Ivankov, he is Monkey D. Luffy, grandson of Monkey D. Garp and son of Monkey D. Dragon. He appeared in the newspaper a few months ago when the news of him being Dragon's son came out in Logatown, Inazuma commented. They had no more information about Luffy. After all, newspapers were extremely difficult to get here on the 5th floor. But they saw the news. Ivankov didn't recognize him before because he didn't have his poster, and the photo in the newspaper was very distant, showing the whole family in the square of Logatown, Garp, Dragon, Lucy, and Luffy. Ivankov took some time to absorb this information while people awaited his reaction. What? He exclaimed as his body flew backward, colliding with the wall and creating a hole, making him fall to the ground on his own. What kind of reaction is that? Robin commented, breaking her calm character a bit as she saw the transvestite king act that way. You, Ivankov stammered. That's a lot of you. Just finish your sentence. Luffy commented, scratching his nose, watching the man just repeat the same phrase with both groups stunned on either side. You're Dragon's son, he exclaimed. Yes, as you can see, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Nice to meet you. I guess... Luffy commented calmly. You, what are you doing here? Were you arrested? He asked, looking at Luffy, not knowing what was happening. No, I'm invading the prison on my own, Luffy commented, shrugging. You're invading the prison? Ivankov made a shark-toothed grimace. How did you get past Magellan? He couldn't believe it. I beat him up, ended up destroying the entire surface of the prison in the process, he commented once again. You can't be serious. Everyone shouted in disbelief, looking at Luffy and his group, thinking they were somehow lying. How annoying. Let's get straight to the point. Luffy continued, looking seriously at the group. I came here to make a proposal. If you want to leave and escape the prison, we'll be heading to Marineford afterward. Luffy said with a smile, while the group in front of him looked shocked. Chapter 298, Impel Down 07, Third Person POV. Impel Down. First half of Grand Line. The silence took over the place for a moment while Ivankov looked at Luffy and blinked his eyes. You want to leave the prison and you're asking if we want to leave too? He asked, shocked after breaking the silence. Of course, isn't this a chance for you to escape? Luffy asked. After all, Magellan is no longer a problem, he finished as he waited for Ivankov's response. Ivankov thought for a bit about Luffy's words, but in the end, shook his head. I don't know. I would just have my poster spread all over the world as a revolutionary. I'll wait for the right moment to act, Ivankov said while his group just looked at him without commenting. All right, let's get going then. Goodbye, Ivankov, Luffy said and started to turn around. Wait, you're leaving just like that? The king of New Kama Land was confused with Luffy leaving without even trying to convince them after they denied his offer. What do you expect, Ivankov? I'm not going to keep insisting you follow me. I made a proposal, you denied it, and now I'm leaving, Luffy commented, shrugging while his crew looked at him and started to follow. The people of New Kama Land stood there not understanding, while Luffy disappeared down the corridor, heading back to the entrance Hugo created. What was that all about? Lamy asked as they walked with Luffy. I made my offer, but I won't force him to leave anyway. Let's get back on our path. We still need to reach the last floor, Luffy said, and they continued entering Hugo's tunnel, returning to the stairs, going back down to the place. Meanwhile, on the dark surface with the night already taking over the sky, Magellan finally opened his eyes at that moment, feeling enormous pain throughout his body, feeling some of his bones broken at that moment. Ah! What is happening? He murmured as he began to remember what happened and felt a sharp pain in his right chest, seeing that it was bandaged at that moment. Director Magellan, the prison doctor said as he approached with a lantern. What happened? Where is Straw Hat? He immediately demanded, looking at the starry sky, since this part of the prison no longer had a roof. They invaded the prison. As far as we know, they entered the 5th level, the man said worriedly. 5th level? This is extremely bad. Their target is level 6. I can't let this happen, Magellan exclaimed, concerned. I believe it's already too late, Director, the man said with regret. How can this be happening? Magellan punched the ground, breaking it with his hand. The Navy? Have they managed to contact the Navy? He asked, and the man shook his head. Our communicators are not working, and all the ships were damaged by Enel's lightning. We are trying to fix them. Our men are also trying to wake up the unconscious sailors, the doctor said. This is very bad. Let's go down immediately to find those pirates, Magellan said as they prepared with a new squad. Even injured, he would not leave his prison unprotected while heading to the still-functioning elevator with his group. Meanwhile, Buggy finally found the place he was looking for. Finally, he found the control room. He immediately saw all the levers on the side, while there were some soldiers taken out by Luffy. He walked past them and smiled as he began to pull the levers, releasing all the cells on the floor. The prisoners immediately looked surprised as their cells opened at that moment. What is happening here? They exclaimed in disbelief, but suddenly a new voice emerged for everyone on the floor. Attention all level 1 prisoners. I'm releasing all of you so we can start the escape together. Remember that I am Buggy, your new boss, he exclaimed joyfully, hoping that people would follow him at least in this escape. Our boss? Who does this guy think he is? The prisoners exclaimed, not very pleased with Buggy's statement. Now let's release our brothers from the 2nd floor, so we'll have a better chance of escaping. Let's unite, he said before turning off the communication and running out of the control room on that floor and heading to the 2nd floor. I think he's right. We should help everyone. That way we'll have a better chance. They started thinking about what Buggy said and agreed with him. Follow Boss Buggy. He got us out of the cells. We owe him that much, others exclaimed, and soon the crowd began to unite with a single cause. Back on the surface, while the soldiers were unaware of what was happening below them, they were trying to wake up the fallen Navy soldiers. I passed out. What happened? One soldier said, but this phrase was common throughout the port. You finally woke up. Listen, we are under attack by the Straw Hats. They are attacking the prison. We must unite to inform HQ about what is happening here. The prison soldiers explained the situation to the men, who were surprised by this. What? We can't let this happen. they quickly exclaimed. First, we must inform HQ. We are without communication, the soldiers said. Yes, let's fix one of the ships then, they exclaimed and began working on one of the warships. As they began to move to see what had been damaged by Enel's lightning, someone spotted something coming from the horizon. A Navy ship, they shouted. Finally, reinforcements have arrived. They shouted when they finally saw the flag of justice on the sail. While they celebrated, they had no idea that it wasn't really a ship with sailors or HQ reinforcements. It was another bomb about to explode on them. What's going on there? Teach, who had started to laugh after seeing the prison slightly illuminated, was surprised by something happening there. There was smoke from destruction, and where the prison should be, everything seemed like massive destruction, with only some parts of the wall still standing, but everything else destroyed somehow. Strange, everything looks destroyed. Someone attacked the prison. Van Augur said after seeing with his equipment. What? Who could that be? Teach exclaimed, confused. Could Pops do this? He had this thought for a second, fearing to encounter Whitebeard here. After all, he knew he couldn't beat him like this, planning to kill him at the end of the war while he would be tired and all wounded. No. He dismissed this thought a minute later. Pops wouldn't attack here without Ace being here. After all, the commander has already been sent to Marineford, he concluded. Could there be someone strong there? Burgess asked, eager to fight someone there. I don't know, but someone is attacking before us. Teach couldn't help but comment, looking at it with a frown. The Navy ship continued towards Impel Down, or what was left of it. A few kilometers behind it, another Navy ship was following, with 2 vice admirals, heading to Impel Down trying to figure out what was happening. Meanwhile, back in the prison, Buggy kept heading to the control room on the 2nd floor to release the new batch of prisoners, while a crowd began to hail him as the leader of the escape. Already in the lower part of the prison, everything seemed calm, without them knowing what was happening above them, only feeling the tremor they had noticed hours ago. But everything calmed down after that. That was until in the middle of the silence of that floor, with the only person who had been talking the whole time now sleeping next to Jimbei in the room, a new explosion came from one of the doors on the side of the floor, making everyone immediately look there, curious, making all the greatest criminals in the world imprisoned wonder what was happening there, and in the middle of the smoke, Luffy emerged first, walking to the center of the floor. Who is this? The words quickly came from the cells, while some looked at that stunned, recognizing very well who that individual was. What is he doing here? Crocodile, in one of the cells near the exit, clenched his teeth, looking at Luffy arriving. Is this a pirate? He isn't wearing prison clothes and has a Jolly Roger on the back of his cloak. I've never seen this pirate symbol, some exclaimed. Wait, there are more of them. Who are these people? Others said, while in the middle of the smoke from the entrance, a new group came out, with all the pirates of the crew looking curious. So this is where all the greatest prisoners in the world are? Zoro asked, curious, sensing with his haki very powerful people there, people he couldn't handle and wasn't sure if Luffy could either. They're just mortals. Enel mocked, placing everyone in a category he considered inferior. Who are you mocking, Earman? I can destroy you! One of the cells spoke, not liking the mockery of that stranger. Enel just smirked and raised his hand while lightning began to come out of it, exploding the wall next to the cell. Let's see if you can back up those words, mortal, he challenged. The man in the cell said nothing more. Hey, you idiot, be careful not to break these walls. We're at the bottom of the sea. Do you want to drown? Hugo glared at him. Hey, is that the lightning Logia? Someone exclaimed. The legendary devil fruit, the supreme Logia? Another couldn't believe it. Hey, who are you guys? Another raised the question to the group. Can you get us out of here? Another said. Get me out of here, and I will serve you for the rest of my life. Together we will be invincible. I was the most powerful of my time. Luffy continued to hear people exclaiming, hoping he could help them, but he ignored them, focusing on moving forward. Long time no see, Crocodile. Luffy looked at a cell nearby, while Crocodile looked at him with eyes full of murderous intent, but Luffy didn't care. Crocodile, Vivi immediately got angry when she saw Luffy addressing him. Ahead on the path, there was a cell where Ace was with two other people. Jinbei hadn't slept while thinking about what would happen during the war, imagining the worst possible scenarios. Meanwhile, he was surprised by the prisoners exclaiming in the distance, seeming like someone was invading the floor. This was only confirmed when he saw a lightning bolt in the distance exploding one of the walls, wondering what was happening there. The person next to him was still snoring until, for some reason, the bubble forming on her nose burst, and she began to wake up tired. What time is it? Is it already daytime? She said with a sweet and innocent tone. That was until she remembered why she was there.
I have to rescue him!
She exclaimed, quickly trying to free herself, but it didn't seem to be working as the chains prevented her from doing anything. Don't worry, we will rescue him. A voice emerged from the darkness in front of the cell, making this person look surprised ahead as footsteps began to appear in the corridor. It didn't take long for Luffy to finally emerge from the darkness and look at the cell with an excited smile.
Mugiwara!
Jinbei was shocked to the core with Luffy appearing there, but Luffy ignored him while his gaze fell on the person next to him, who looked at him stunned as well, but soon this was replaced by a glimmer of hope as tears began to fall from her eyes.
Shh!
She screamed with all the strength of her lungs. Finally, I found you. I came to Impel Down to rescue you, sister, Luffy said, maintaining his loving smile. Chapter 299. Impel Down 08 Third-Person POV. Impel Down, first half of Grand Line. Lucy was pensive in Marineford after returning from Eni's lobby. Her brother had protected her, and she almost went to help him fight the admirals, even if it meant her expulsion from the Navy. After all, she didn't want Luffy to die. She even tried to find her grandfather, but he had gone to Impel Down to take an important prisoner, which made her feel relieved. However, as soon as she started hearing rumors about a possible war between the Navy and the Whitebeard pirates, she was shocked and was about to prepare for war. But when she heard from some Marines that it was Portgas D. Ace, the person who was the trigger for the war with his public execution in just over a week, she immediately went to protest. When she was about to head to Sengoku's office to beg for Ace not to be executed, Garp had returned and stopped her. Lucy was extremely upset about this and started a fight with her grandfather in front of everyone, which ended with Garp imprisoning her, saying she would remain locked up until the end of the war so she wouldn't do anything reckless and get expelled from the Navy. Garp, as his personality suggests, did not lock her in just any cell in Marineford, but led his granddaughter to the 6th level of Impel Down, so she would stay there until the war was over. Lucy was extremely happy to see Ace after so many years without seeing him, but knowing his situation, she did everything she could to free herself from there. She screamed day and night, stopping only to eat and sleep. The other prisoners often cursed her for her persistence until they gave up trying to make her stop attempting to escape, which was futile, as she had a sea-stone cuff on her wrist. When she saw Ace being taken away, she thought it would be the last time she would see him, and was extremely upset, to the point of straining so hard against the chains that she ended up tiring herself out and falling asleep. What she didn't expect was to wake up to someone she never imagined seeing in this place. Luffy appeared right in front of her. While Jinbei, a few meters away from her, was shocked, she screamed with all her might, still wearing her Navy uniform with the Justice Cape. She didn't care about showing her happiness to see him there. She exclaimed with the biggest smile she could make, while Luffy responded with the same smile, saying he came there to rescue her. Luffy knew about his sister due to Kuma's message through the Den Den Mushi, saying he heard that Garp's granddaughter was being taken to Impel Down. This led Luffy to come to Impel Down immediately and take the Tenryu Bitos as hostages so they wouldn't execute Ace. "Lucy," Yamato exclaimed, stunned to see the girl he saw at Eni's lobby. "Wait, why is your sister here, Luffy?" Usopp exclaimed, surprised, not having seen her since they met in East Blue. "This is the girl from Eni's lobby," Vivi commented, remembering that Luffy fought with her a bit. "So she is your sister, Luffy?" Robin asked, curious. Some members didn't know her, as they only heard about her and him meeting at Eni's lobby and fighting a little against each other. My grandpa put her here so she wouldn't interfere with the war and be labeled as an enemy of the Navy, Luffy commented.
Luffy!
Lucy ignored everyone else while she shouted excitedly for Luffy. You really came to get me out of here. Ace is going to be executed. He needs us, she exclaimed immediately, while Luffy nodded. Don't worry, we will go to Marineford from here and rescue him, Luffy said as she nodded happily. Is she finally going away? Please take her. I can't stand hearing her efforts to escape the cell anymore. Some prisoners seemed quite relieved with this idea. Take this talkative woman quickly. It will be a relief. I can finally sleep in peace. I was almost escaping from my cell because I couldn't stand it anymore. The exclamations and complaints about Lucy began to be heard from all sides as they were ignored by Luffy starting to approach the cell. You are really here. Jinbei calmed down after his initial surprise and spoke to Luffy. Yes, I came to rescue my sister, as you can see, Luffy said as he got close to her with a universal key he spent millions on in the shop and went to Lucy's cuffs, removing them as they fell to the ground. Finally, Lucy exclaimed as she jumped onto Luffy, hugging him with her rubbery arms. Good to see you, Lucy, he smiled. Luffy, I'm so happy to see you. Thank goodness you're here, she exclaimed joyfully. Mugiwara, let me help you. I'll go to Marineford with you. I intend to fight to save Ace too, Jinbei suddenly exclaimed to Luffy, who left his sister to look at him. Jinbei-san. Hachi was happy to see the Shichibukai there, now that he could be released. Jinbei-sama, Shirahoshi also exclaimed. Luffy, save the uncle. He is a good person and cares about Ace. Lucy also exclaimed, hoping Luffy would release him, but he just kept looking at Jinbei. I can do that, but I have one condition. Luffy spoke in a more serious tone, while Jinbei looked at him, confused. I'll release you, but I want you to join my crew, he said. The crew did not expect Luffy to invite someone in the middle of the prison in exchange for their freedom. I can't, Jinbei said. You will no longer be a Shichibukai. You'll be locked up here for the rest of your life, as far as I know. I don't want to trade your freedom, but you know that I doubt Whitebeard will last after this war. I intend to make Fishman Island my territory, Luffy said. You intend to take Whitebeard's territories? Jinbei exclaimed. No, not Whitebeard's, but someone will have to take this place after he falls. You know that. Shirahoshi is my companion, and she is the true ruler of the seas. You know that too, Luffy said while Jinbei looked at him in conflict. If you join my crew, you won't regret it, and I intend to help Shirahoshi with the dreams her mother had, to elevate the Fishman race to the surface sun. Whitebeard always treated them as friends, but he could never help them that way. But my crew and I will change that. Luffy had members who could change the structures of the world and move islands. They could easily remove Fishman Island, but first he had to build a safe territory in the new world for that. I will join your crew under one condition, Jinbei suddenly said, surprising everyone with the Shichibukai's response. Speak, as long as it's not saving Ace, after all, I will naturally do that, Luffy said. No, but I want you not to let the old man die. My condition is that Whitebeard lives after this war, Jinbei said. You are offending him that way. Whitebeard is an old warrior of the old era. He would rather die on the battlefield than die on a bed with wounds. Luffy scoffed. After all, he didn't know if Whitebeard would survive or even ask for help. It was an insult to Luffy if he were Whitebeard. Jinbei remained silent for a while before speaking again. All right, but promise me you will help him if he is fighting unfairly against someone. He spoke, and Luffy nodded. He went to Jinbei and freed him at that moment, making the Shichibukai, or ex-Shichibukai, finally stand up. Luffy noticed he didn't receive the system message that Jinbei was his crew member, but he didn't care, already knowing he should wait for that until the end of the war. Uncle Jinbei, you will help us too. Now you are part of Luffy's crew. You are now a pirate. Lucy exclaimed, but was conflicted. Lucy, you know that now you will have to desert the Navy. You will be a member of my crew from now on too, but we'll talk about that later. First, we have to deal with one more person here, Luffy said. His crew saw their captain start to walk out of the cell, followed by Lucy and Jinbei behind him. As he passed the crew, a loud chorus began to explode from all the cells at that moment. Hey pirate, Luffy as the girl called you. Free us, please. We will follow you. The voices echoed through the dark and damp corridors of the floor. Straw Hat, don't leave us here. We're strong. We can fight by your side. Free us. Together, we can bring down the Navy. Luffy, don't ignore us. We need you. Help us, Straw Hat. We promise our loyalty. The pleas grew around Luffy in the hope that he would free them from what they heard, heading to Marineford. But Luffy continued walking amid all that shouting while he ignored them, heading straight for a specific cell. Among them were members of Blackbeard's future crew, some even asking for freedom, but Luffy didn't care about them either. Hey Luffy, what are you doing? Vivi frowned as he stopped in front of a man in prison clothes, his hand replaced by a golden claw. Crocodile, the former Shichibukai, was staring at Luffy with a piercing gaze. After all, he had been taken down by this man before being brought here, and Luffy had mentioned knowing his secret. Crocodile, Luffy said calmly. Crocodile slowly opened his eyes. Well, if it isn't Straw Hat, what do you want with me? He seemed to speak in control of the situation, but was tense, and Luffy could sense it with his haki. Met an old acquaintance of yours a few minutes ago, Ivankov. Remember him? Luffy taunted a little. What do you want? Crocodile became a bit tense at that, not maintaining the calmer tone from before. I want you to come to Marineford with me. In exchange, I'll give you your freedom and even keep your secret, Luffy said calmly. Hey Luffy, you can't be serious, Vivi exclaimed, dissatisfied with the man who almost destroyed her country being released. Even Robin was surprised by this, but remained silent. It's okay, Vivi. He's necessary there. Luffy said this because he didn't want Crocodile to die there. He knew that if he left him, Blackbeard would try to kill him as soon as he refused to serve him. Crocodile still had a lot of utility for Luffy, so he didn't want the Sandman to die like that. You speak as if I won't attack you. Aren't you afraid I might stab you in the back? Crocodile asked with a serious tone. You can try, but you'll hardly be able to hurt me. I'm much more powerful than back then. I have a bounty of 1 billion, you know. Luffy mocked. I'm willing to help you get out of there, but if you try to hurt any of my crew members... He kept a glint in his eye at that moment. I'll kill you, even if you turn out to be a woman after all. Luffy whispered for only Crocodile to hear the last part, while only Yamato and Choo-Choo could hear it. Crocodile gritted his teeth at that moment, but what could he do? This was an opportunity for him to get out of prison and gain his freedom, even finally meeting Whitebeard from what he had heard. Fine, I'll help you until Marineford. Crocodile admitted, and Luffy nodded with satisfaction as he began to open his cell and remove the sea-stone cuffs that restrained him. Despite Vivi's continued dissatisfaction, she said nothing more than glare at Crocodile as he now followed Luffy out of the cell. Well, now that we have those we came to rescue, let's continue. Our goal now is Marineford and the war between the Navy and Whitebeard. Luffy said with some satisfaction before they started heading for the exit from where they came. Chapter 300, Impel Down 09 Third-Person POV. Impel Down, first half of Grand Line. Next stop will be Marineford, Luffy said with a smile as he was about to take the next step. I remember that hat very well. While people were begging Luffy to help them get free, a powerful voice sounded among them, and Luffy stopped immediately at that moment, turning his hat while the group looked confused. Of course, you know it. After all, it belonged to your captain, Luffy said, maintaining a smile. Who is it? Yamato asked. The voice didn't speak immediately, but a moment later said, Do you think you deserve to wear it? It spoke angrily, silencing all the members who stopped to look at them. Luffy was silent for a while, then he opened a smile and began to laugh. Ha ha ha! If you think I can't wear it, come to me, Douglas Bullet. I'll be waiting for you in a year. Luffy said, keeping his smile. You talk as if I had already left here. He mocked, while the whole place went silent with the conversation. You will leave soon, so I'll be waiting for you in a year, Luffy said, as his hand went to his waist and he began to remove Ace. Before anyone could react, he moved his arm and launched an air slash directly at the cell, but he didn't stop with just that slash and launched a second in another direction. Boom! The sound of the two explosions due to his attack echoed through the place, while everyone didn't understand their captain's actions, but stayed silent, with 2 cells exploding and revealing them broken with red rays from Ace. "Why are you doing this?" A voice from the 2nd cell that Luffy attacked spoke calmly. "I was sure you would be out of here today, but I want to ensure it, Douglas Bullet and Patrick Redfield. I'll be waiting for you outside and come find me in the New World in a year." Luffy immediately challenged them. "That sword!" Douglas Bullet once again growled while still being held in his cell. "If you think I'm not worthy, both of the hat and the sword, come after me, Bullet," Luffy responded. "I'm too old for what you want from me, kid." The 2nd cell spoke, and Luffy just smiled. "You'll find the QQ no Mi. This fruit will make you recover all your strength," Luffy said. "Do you know who these 2 people are? Do you know who you are really helping to free?" A new voice emerged, and it was none other than the former director of Impel Down, Shiryu of the Rain. Luffy ignored him, knowing that arguing with this man wouldn't help, even though he was losing his composure with whom Luffy was helping to get out of prison. Luffy just thought about having this fight with them, seeing who would be the strongest and giving them a year to get stronger for it. He wanted to feel the thrill of facing someone powerful, having doubts about his own victory. After all, that's how someone who loved fighting should feel, and Luffy got this thrill again since he came to this world and wanted to enjoy it in the best possible way, facing legends and monsters. "You talk as if you were a seer. Who are you?" Redfield asked, not believing Luffy's words much. Luffy smiled at the place in the midst of the silence and replied, "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will be the Emperor of all seas," he responded. Monkey D? Not only the 2, but all the prisoners were surprised by Garp's surname. "I am Garp's grandson," Luffy replied before anyone else asked. "You, the Emperor of the Sea, think you can surpass Roger?" Douglas mocked. "Of that I have no doubt. Listen, everyone, and remember my words. I will dominate all the seas of this world. It won't be you, the Yonko, the Marines, or the world government that will stop me. I will destroy everyone in my way, so you'd better prepare yourselves," Luffy said, releasing his Conqueror's Haki throughout level 6. "He's crazy," someone exclaimed. "He has Conqueror's Haki. It's no surprise to his declaration," another said. "A child thinking they can conquer the world," a third murmured. "Master!" Baby 5 had shining eyes for Luffy at that moment. Zoro smiled. Luffy being Luffy, Nami commented with crossed arms but had a sparkle in her eyes. Jinbei stayed silent but was surprised by it. Mugiwara, Crocodile frowned. "He won't be alone in this," Yamato exclaimed, releasing her Haki. "Luffy-sama, I will always help you," Shirahoshi said, releasing her Conqueror's Haki as well. "I will be the greatest swordsman in the world by your side," Zoro said, releasing his energy wave. "Tsk, I will take that title from you, Zoro, but I will help Luffy," Quina said, releasing her Haki. "Someone needs to feed him," Reiju commented, releasing her Haki. Lami didn't say anything but also released her Haki wave. "Multiple Conqueror's Haki? 7? 7 users of Conqueror's Haki in one group? Who the hell are they? What's happening out there for us to see so many people together?" The exclamations started to emerge from all the cells as the wave of multiple Hakis not only generated a wind, but suddenly the whole prison started to tremble with it. What is this now?" Magellan was frightened by it. "An earthquake!" Ivankov shouted a little above the origin of the tremor. Meanwhile, on the 6th floor itself, the legendary pirates like Bullet and Redfield were looking at it stunned while frowning. A moment later, the Haki finally began to calm down. "You see, I have very powerful companions, enough to bring the world to its knees," Luffy began. "Both you from Roger or even from Rocks, we are a crew that will surpass all, so I hope to see you as opponents the moment we meet. I'll be waiting for you in the New World. Don't forget that," Luffy said with a smile, and began to walk again, while everyone stayed silent in their cells, thinking exactly about his words. "Hey Luffy, who were they?" Zoro asked, not remembering hearing about them. "One of them is called Douglas Bullet. He was known as the Monster, a member of Gold D. Roger's crew, perhaps the most powerful of them. I can't say for sure," Luffy said. He didn't know him well enough to confirm anything. After all, he hadn't paid attention to that in the original work. The strongest of Roger's crew from the Pirate King's crew? Usopp shouted, while almost everyone looked shocked at this situation. What's so special about this guy? Enel mocked. Tsk, you don't seem to understand. Of all the people we've faced, none compare to the strength of this man if he is as the captain says, Hugo commented. And the other one, Nojiko commented. He is Redfield. He is from the same era, even emerged before Whitebeard created his crew when he served under Rock's flag. He was a man so powerful that he never needed a crew, preferring to sail alone on the sea, and that ended up being his downfall when the Marines ambushed him with 3 admirals and 10 vice-admirals at the same time. Luffy commented. "Ni, all that for just one man?" Hachi exclaimed, while Jinbei stayed silent, but equally surprised by this man he had never heard of either. "Yes, that's why he is a legendary pirate." Luffy smiled, looking forward to facing these forces in the future. "Wait, do you really want to face them? Will you be okay?" Vivi exclaimed, worried. "It's all right, trust your captain," Luffy said again. "I don't quite understand, but Luffy, you can't release prisoners from prison," Lucy exclaimed. Everyone looked at her as if she were an idiot at that moment. "But Lucy-sama, weren't you a prisoner too?" Shirahoshi asked innocently, while Lucy finally realized it. "That's true," she scratched her head, surprised. "But we have to save Ace. Let's go, Luffy," she exclaimed, wanting to run. "Wait," Luffy said, walking calmly until they returned to the place they came from, with an elevator on one side and the emergency entrance to the 5th level on the other. "Are we going to use the elevator?" Nami asked. Luffy didn't respond immediately. He simply clenched his fists and launched a storm of flames at the transportation equipment, which exploded the next moment. "No," he replied to his woman. "You could have at least warned us," Nami complained with a frown. "Ha! Let's go. We'll see a few more acquaintances and return to the surface," Luffy exclaimed with his new group, satisfied with what he did on this floor. "Zia! Let's go. Straight to the 6th floor." Teach exclaimed as his ship finally docked in the port while countless Marines looked at him with hope. "Look, the Marines sent a Shichibukai," they exclaimed, but soon noticed something strange. "But this is strange. Where are the HQ Marines? Why are we only seeing the group of a newly appointed Shichibukai?" the Marines exclaimed. It was already dawn, and it wouldn't take long for the sun to start rising in the east. Captain, the place is all destroyed. Who could have done this?" Burgess asked. "Strange. Someone really attacked the prison before us," Van Augur said calmly while trying to identify the height. "It's true. Let's ask the Marines then," Teach said and jumped off the ship while the people were a bit cautious about this unexpected visit. "Hey, what happened here?" Teach asked, while a Marine, despite his caution, spoke, finding it even stranger that even Teach didn't know, which meant that HQ didn't send them. "It was the Straw Hats. They launched an attack on the prison. They destroyed the 1st floor and started passing through all the levels. We don't know where they are with the communication cut off," the Marines exclaimed. "What?" Teach was extremely surprised by that. He thought of attacking the prison and is going down. What is he planning? I hope he doesn't ruin my plan. Teach exclaimed, a little worried about Luffy's presence here. "Plan?" the Marine asked when he heard. "My plan to invade Impel Down and recruit new members for my crew," Teach exclaimed while the Marines and prison soldiers were surprised by this declaration, and before they could react, Teach released the power of his Akuma no Mi and the entire ground began to turn dark. "What is this?" they exclaimed, surprised, seeing that they couldn't even move. "Zia! Let's start and catch up with Mugiwara before he ruins my plans," Teach said and began to suck in all the people in front of him. "Hey, what's happening?" The people started to get scared as they were sucked into the darkness, unable to do anything. They began to enter that dark mass and disappear, while emitting frightened screams. The screams finally stopped when everyone was swallowed by the black hole. "Zia!" Teach laughed and began to release the darkness above him, with hundreds of Marines and guards falling, all injured and unconscious in a heap in front of him. "Let's go. We've taken care of these. Now the way is clear. Zia ha ha ha!" Teach exclaimed and began to walk, stepping over the scattered bodies, while some Marines and soldiers, horrified by this scene, began to hide, and the Blackbeard pirates ignored them, heading for the stairs with the elevator not working. That's it for this part. Thank you for listening to What If There Was a Different Luffy. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.